Municipal Council to order at 6:30. Please join me for a salute to the flag. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. I would entertain a motion to suspend the rules. Second. Thank you. Motion's in order. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. We are operating under suspended rules for the purpose of voting out only one matter in front of the Finance Committee. There will be no public hearings. There will be no committee of the whole. There will be no communications. So, Madam Clerk, would you please read the notice of the special meeting?
Thank you. May 22nd, 2025, to the members of the Municipal Council from James J. Delisio, Council President. Councilors, by the authority of Article 2, Section 2-7C of the Attleboro Home Rule Charter, I hereby call a special meeting of the Municipal Council as follows. Date, May 27, 2025. Time is 6:30 p.m. in the Council Chamber, City Hall, 77 Park Street. The purpose is to call a special meeting Tuesday, May 27, 2025, to address a finance vote for $10,000 for postage, which is time-sensitive, and any other business that may be in front of the Council. Sincerely, James J. Delisio, President.
Thank you. What we will do now is I will entertain a motion of recess. We'll recess, allow Councilor Kovas to vote his piece of business out. He will then recess his committee and we'll come back. So, some dancing around, but it's all right. We're good. That being said, I would entertain a motion to recess.
Second.
Thank you. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? We are now recessed.
Thank you. I'd like to call the Finance Committee to order at 6:32. We have multiple items today before the Finance Committee, but we'll start with one and then we'll recess, go back to the full council, and then after the full council's done, we'll reconvene the Finance Committee. Does that make sense? All right, cool. All right. From the docket of May 20th, 2025, I entertain a motion to transfer $10,000 from account 1146100-511000, collector salary and wages, to account 1146100-534210, collector postage.
Second.
Motion is in order. This is just transferring money to the postage account because we running out of money for postage for the collector to send out the tax bills. Pretty straightforward, and we just missed it in one of the communications, so this just addresses that, and we need to vote it out because she's out of money. Any questions? Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes. And I move to recess.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. And we are recessed at 6:34.
I'd like to call the special meeting of the Municipal Council back to order at 6:34. We will now go into the committee report. We'll begin, as always, with Mr. Kovas.
Thank you. Reporting for the Finance Committee. From the docket of May 20th, 2025, I entertain a motion to transfer $10,000 from account collector salary and wages to account collector postage.
Second.
Thank you. Motion's in order. Any comments?
We just talked about this in committee.
All right, that being said, this will be a roll call vote beginning with Mr. Kovas.
Mr. Kobus?
Yes.
Mr. Lavoy?
Yes.
Vice President Dolan?
Yes.
Ms. Holmes?
Yes.
Mr. Angelo?
Yes.
Ms. Sawyer?
Yes.
Mr. Waterman?
Yes.
Mr. Tavares?
Yes.
President Delisio?
Yes.
7 nays, 0 nays.
Thank you. Motion passes.
That concludes the business for the Finance Committee, and I call for a committee meeting at the next appropriate time.
Thank you. I entertain a motion to adjourn. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? We are adjourned at 6:35. Quickest meeting ever.
I know.
Thank you, Madam Clerk.
Have a good evening.
Thank you. I'd like to call the Finance Committee back to order at 6:35. Is Chris here? Give me a minute to read this and then we can get started here. All right, from the docket of June 3rd, 2025, I entertain a motion to approve the following resolution authorizing the mayor to execute a tax increment exception agreement between the city and 41 South Main Street LLC, Paragon Investment LLC. Deadline, August 14, 2025, to submit application to EOHLC. Attleboro Municipal Council resolution authorizing the tax increment exception agreement for 41 South Main Street LLC. Whereas 41 South Main Street LLC, the owner of the building located at 27 through 39 South Main Street, parcel 031249000 in the city of Attleboro, is proposing to construct a new market rate multifamily residential building at the former Sun Chronicle parking lot at 41 South Main Street. The total investment at this location, including site preparation and construction, will be approximately $12 million. And whereas 41 South Main Street LLC is seeking to become a certified project in accordance with the Massachusetts Housing Development Incentive Program and is seeking a tax increment exception agreement from the City of Attleboro in accordance with the Massachusetts Housing Development Incentive Program and Mass General Law, Chapter 40V. And whereas the City of Attleboro strongly supports increased economic development within its downtown, increasing the market rate housing inventory within the city, and expanding the consumer base for downtown businesses. And whereas the proposed project meets the location and eligibility criteria set forth in the Downtown Attleboro Housing Development Zone and Plan, and whereas the Economic Development Incentive Board has negotiated an agreement voting to approve a tax increment exemption agreement structure for 41 South Main Street LLC, and now recommends authorization of said agreement and vote by the Municipal Council of the City of Attleboro. Now therefore be it resolved that the Municipal Council of the City of Attleboro hereby A, ratifies and authorizes the mayor to execute a tax increment exemption agreement pursuant to the Massachusetts Housing Development Incentive Program between 41 South Main Street LLC and the City of Attleboro to further the development of market rate residential housing on South Main Street in downtown Attleboro, including the following parcels: parcel 031249000. B, authorizes the mayor or her designee to take such other and further actions as may be necessary or appropriate to carry out the purposes of this resolution, signed and sealed this day of the year 2025.
Second.
Motion is in order. And I've invited Chris to come before us and talk about this because I assume we would have some questions about this tax increment exemption. And Chris has prepared a presentation for us. So Chris, if you have a few minutes. Now, this does not require a public hearing, but I did think it warranted a little bit of discussion. I know I had some questions, so if you could.
Absolutely.
Welcome.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Councilor Tavares, I know you're a member of the committee as well. Council President, councilors. I really appreciate this opportunity to speak to you all regarding this project. For those of you who might be watching online and might not know me, my name is Christopher McDermott. I'm the Economic Development Director with the city. And the reason I'm before you today is specifically regarding a proposal for a tax increment exemption at 41 South Main Street. So as some of you might be aware from the downtown, that is the former Sun Chronicle lot. It is currently a vacant lot. It was recently purchased by Paragon Development. This is the party that's responsible for the adjacent development at Briggs Crossing, 27-39 South Main Street, which will be about 46 units, so similar in scale. And they came to us with this new development, interested in pursuing a tie agreement or a tax increment exemption to really continue that development further down the street and occupy that adjacent parcel. So the project itself will be a 6-story, 45-unit development consisting of 15 studios, 21 single bedrooms, and 9 two-bedroom units. The parking for the site will be podium parking with 26 spaces underneath. And as you mentioned, Mr. Chairman, the estimated new value created at the site will be around $12 million. So just regarding the project timeline, they first came to me, I'd say, back in September. I was relatively new to the position. Introductory meeting, it was honestly initially going to be a discussion of the ongoing project they have at 2739 South Main Street when they mentioned this new project and we started talking about that. I brought this to the attention of the Economic Development Incentive Board, which is the committee we have in the city which vets these agreements and negotiates the tie structures prior to bringing them to this council for approval, making them aware in this past December, and then had some follow-up conversations with them over the next ensuing couple of months. We touched base again, first with the Executive Office of Housing and Livable Communities, or EHLC, in part because tie agreements open up the opportunity for a developer to pursue what's called Housing Development Incentive Program. Those are additional state tax credits on top of the tie. But in order to apply for those, you need to get a local tie first. It's sort of considered a vote of approval. Moving on from there, I had some follow-up meetings with the developer in March, also with the chief assessor, discussing what a possible structure might look like in regards to the tie itself, before finally bringing them before the Economic Development Incentive Board in April and May earlier this year. And I'm happy to report that in May of just this past month, they EDIB voted to approve the tie structure that you're currently looking at. So what is the tax increment exemption structure that we're talking about right now, and what is a tie to begin with? So I know some of the counselors here probably know this already, but for the benefit of people who might be watching, a tie is tax relief on a percentage of the added value on a development. So full taxes are still paid on whatever the existing value was before you broke ground and started developing, but the tie gives you some relief on that added value. As I mentioned before, the tie is also a prerequisite for the HDIP program, which offers up to $2.5 million, I believe, over the course of 10 years, which adds some additional cushion that allows the project to pencil out. So the requested structure we're looking at right now, it is modeled after what they have at 2739 South Main Street. So for fiscal years 1 through 5, they would be seeking a relief on 70% of the added value of the development. Fiscal years 6 through 10, they'd be seeking relief on 65%. In fiscal years 11 through 15, it would drop down to 60 before dissipating entirely in the 15th year. That adds up to a total of roughly $1.5 million in tax relief over the course of that 15 years. I know that probably sounds like a large figure, but just to look at it from our own perspective, the impact on the tax base, per some information the assessor was able to share with me, without the project, we'd collect around $35,000 in property taxes on the property over 15 years. Without the tie, if that were possible, it would be amazing. Unfortunately, it really isn't, but we'd be able to collect $2.3 million. The reality is, with the tie and the project moving forward, that assessment tax would increase to $840,000, $560 over the course of 15 years, which is an additional $805,000 over the revenue the city is already collecting on that site. So it still pencils out to a net positive for the city. The rationale for the request from the developer's standpoint is financial constraints first and foremost. Without the tie and access to state tax credits, sorry.
Can you go back to that
Absolutely.
previous slide? And I want to, are there any questions on this slide? Because I think this, for me, this was one of the keys with this, in sort of understanding that the city still ends, without this, the developer allegedly can't proceed with the project.
Right.
And with the project and with the tie, the city still makes $805,000
Yep.
more than without the project happening.
Yep.
And I just want to make sure everybody sort of understands that. I want to make sure, see if anybody has any questions on this slide. Counselor Holmes.
Thank you. So it says the requested structure. Does it usually go from 70, 65, 60, or is this what they're requesting and other developers have requested different structures?
They can differ. So any tie, it has to last a minimum of 5 years up to a maximum of 20, and you can relieve a minimum of 5% of the assessed the incremental value up to a maximum of 100%. So it depends on the project. I think the 70, 65, 60, like I said before, was a structure we used in the past with 2739 South Main Street, so it did provide a bit of a template. But upon looking at it with the developer and also with my colleagues, I mean, the Economic Development Incentive Board includes myself, the assessor, the planner, the mayor, the treasurer. So looking at it as a group, we all agree that it penciled out properly, and it benefited the developer to the point where they were able to move forward with the project, and they had the breathing room they needed to do that. But it also protected the interest of the city as well and ensured that we still collected some tax revenue on it. Absolutely.
Thank you.
Council LeBoy?
Thank you, Chair Kovas. I know you keep mentioning the other property they developed using the same scale, but wasn't that done more so to offset the cost increase from COVID? And it was a project that was gonna potentially be stalled. I mean, now we're kind of just looking at a project that they wanna do a second project. COVID's ended, but yet they still want tax breaks, so.
So it's true, COVID's ended, and yes, those were some of the factors each HLC had, well, DHCD at the time had taken longer to approve the project than had been initially anticipated. But many of those costs that rose over the course of COVID really have not come down. Interest rates are still high, input costs are still high. One of the factors is, the ongoing discussion regarding tariffs and imports, and where that's going to stand is just injected uncertainty into the entire project. So you need to order things further out and, budget for that a little more carefully than you did before. So many of those variables are still in existence today. But I think that's a lot of what's driving it forward as well.
Councilor Sawyer?
Hi, so I just want to get clear in my head. You're saying that they wouldn't be able to do this project at all without the tax exemption from the city?
No, it actually pencils out if they do it without the tie and also without the HDIP tax credits that the tie enables. It comes to a monthly loss. If they were to build and operate it, which wouldn't happen, it comes to a monthly loss of about $216,000. So it would just be a completely infeasible project at that point. You wouldn't even move forward with breaking ground.
And one more, and I was sorry to interrupt.
No, not at all, please.
Councilor Tavares, do you have one more, or do you want to wait until the?
Yeah, no, it was just a question about that first bullet. So impact to tax base, right? That first bullet without the project. Is that assumption based on the fact that remains a vacant lot? So
Yes.
no other development.
Right,
whether
no other
it's
development.
multifamily or anything else. Okay.
Yes.
All right.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you. And I did think that this was an important slide to make sure we all understood. Councilor Angelo?
Thank you, Councilor Kovas. That doesn't include the Synchronical building?
No, it does not
parking
include the building across the street. No, it does not.
I'm probably more concerned about the parking than anything, honestly. It seems like it's about in my estimation, about half the amount of parking than what you're probably going to need for that place, and where would we find the other parking?
I know parking is a significant aspect of the permitting process. It's something that I know the planning board, and I don't know, Gary, if you want to add anything on that, but I know it's something the planning board and the ZBA both look at as something's moving through the approval process, making sure that, there's sufficient parking, whether it's on-site or in an adjacent location, that the residents will be able to access. But also, I think in a certain sense, it's not directly in the TOD district, but it is a bit of a transit-oriented development. It's what I'm thinking, maybe a quarter mile, if not less, from the train station. So you probably will have a decent number of people who, maybe it's a young couple moving into a one-bedroom or a two-bedroom. They're looking at it and going, you know what? I go into Boston during the day. You can work from home. We only really need one car. We can run errands that way, that kind of thing. So I think it's going to pencil out to the situation where you need 45 cars for the 45 units. But it's something that I know is addressed in the full permitting process.
And thank you. If you want to go ahead and continue.
Absolutely, no, happy to, thank you. So rationale, and I know we were just talking a little bit about this a second ago, but as I mentioned, the financial constraints without the tie and the access to the HDIP tax credits, the project would only be able to run at a deficit. And even with the tie, their return on investment is only around 4%. Usually a project like this, you want to get somewhere between 5 and 10%. So it's still not a huge moneymaker from that perspective. There are some spatial constraints. I think anyone that's driven by that site, it's a narrow parking lot, so there's a limit to how many units they can really fit in there and what they can drive as far as revenue is concerned. I might also introduce some cost constraints when it comes to construction. You might not be able to put a crane in the location you exactly want to, so you might need to haul some things up. And last but not least, as we were talking about a second ago, input costs. There's still a lot of fluctuation when it comes to steel, lumber, other inputs of that nature. So that tends to just drive costs up in the near term. But when it comes to our own perspective, why would we consider pursuing this? So first of all, as we discussed a second ago also, there's the additional tax revenues. Even with the tie, as I mentioned, the project still generates an additional $805,000 in tax revenue over 15 years and some change. And this does not account for the excise taxes that would be levied against the 26 odd vehicles that are parked underneath in the podium parking. So that number will go up. Cohesive development, it is a project that fits in nicely with its surrounding environment. It will match relatively closely to the project that's going on right next door by the same developer, so that's sort of an added bonus right there. It activates a key vacant parcel. One of the things that me and Gary talk about a lot is the fact that we don't really like seeing parking lots in our downtown. We want to see something that's built up, that adds value. So there's an opportunity to activate a parcel and really turn it into something that's generating some tax revenue. That's something we're always very interested in. It also does so in a manner that, as I said before, is consistent with the surrounding built environment. Lastly, there are the positive externalities, and these can be a little more difficult to calculate. But you're going to have 45 to 90, I'm just spitballing there depending on how many people per unit, individuals living in those units. And usually you spend about 30% of your income on rent. So if you extrapolate that out, they were able to share their projected rents with me. You're looking at people or a household making roughly $62,000 for a studio up to $104,000 for a 2-bedroom, which is above the median household income for that census tract, which is only around $55,227. So those are individuals who are moving through our downtown, who are living in our downtown, frequenting our storefronts, our businesses, have a little jingle in our pocket, and are stepping out the front door on a Friday night and going, maybe I'll go to Morin's, something like that. The development context. So this also builds on, carries forward the momentum that we've been seeing in the downtown from a number of other developments that are currently underway. The first, again, Briggs Crossing, 2739 South Main Street. We expect that to open up in the coming months. I actually just received an email about a ribbon cutting over there, so we're very excited about that. Gary, I know you were on that too. I just mentioned Morin's a second ago, the 1911 restaurant, their recent expansion and remodel. I think it is beautiful. It's absolutely wonderful, and it adds something that the downtown hasn't had up until this moment. So really excited about that, and like I said, they're right across the street, so there's sort of a natural connection right there. We also have the Union Street Mills at 37 Union Street. That was a affordable development. It repurposed a major mill building and really came forward in a beautiful way and is now fully occupied. In fact, I think they have a waiting list. And last but not least on this list is the Jewel at 54 Union Street. This one opened up and closed out shortly after I came on board. It was a great ribbon cutting to attend. I believe that has something like 43 units, if I remember correctly. I might be a little bit off on that number. But they are also fully occupied, and it's turned into a real improvement in our downtown at a key location, another gateway to the area. So with that, just to wrap up my presentation, I would encourage the committee and ultimately the council as a whole to vote in favor of this tie structure. The project, I truly believe, is brought forward by a proven developer who has delivered for the city before. It addresses a recognized need in our downtown and our city in general for additional housing, capitalizes and extends the momentum that we've seen from other developments, attracts new residents who will support local businesses, activates a vacant parcel, and adds new value to the tax base. So with that, thank you very much, and if anyone has any questions, please feel free.
Councilor Dolan, Vice President Dolan.
Thank you. So my initial question was the same as Council Angela's. I think it's super concerning about the 26 parking spaces for 45 units, because that leaves 19, considering if the people only have one car, the first 26. So what they'll be doing is parking on the street, which we don't have enough street parking as it is. So that to me is super concerning, and I get it. I want people in the city, I want more housing, and I want empty lots to be usable, but that's a lot of lacking parking spaces.
And the parking in our downtown is something that we're working on and looking to address. One of the things I've been working on with the mayor and with Gary and our procurement officer is actually a feasibility study that would look at the 3 major parking sites we have in the downtown, the library lot, the YMCA lot, and the Sanford Garage, and try to identify where we have could best facilitate some additional vertical capacity. So we put an RFP out for that recently, and we got some strong responses back on it. There's a little bit more than we're budgeted, but I'm submitting a grant to cover the difference. So that's something we're doing a bit longer term to address that. When it comes to the permitting process and, how many cars we expect to see there, Gary, I don't know if you want to have a
Let me interject. Thank you very much.
Absolutely.
Hello, all. Pleasure to be here. Sorry to wear a suit today. I didn't expect to speak tonight. But regarding the permitting, I know it's been mentioned a couple of times. They are proposing podium parking, so that would be parking beneath the building. But even though, the ratio is at 1-to-1, the Zoning Board of Appeals, when it considers these, doesn't just assume whatever you could fit on the site, then it's a free-for-all. The Board of Appeals or the Planning Board and the staff doesn't just assume whatever you can't fit on the property then spills over onto the street. So there are other provisions of the zoning ordinance where the Board of Appeals is afforded to reduce the parking down to 0 in the central business zoning district. It has the latitude to reduce the parking up to 50% anywhere else in the city. But given its finite amount of area, the board is given a lot of latitude, given that it's the central business zoning district. So even though we could reduce it, Councilor Dolan, there are other provisions of the zoning ordinance which I will encourage the applicant to file for, is by special permit, they may find opportunity to park in another parking lot of a private parking lot within 300 feet, and also may park in a municipal parking lot within 1,000 feet. So the fact that the board might reduce will likely reduce it, but again, I don't want to compromise the spirit of a public hearing, but I'm talking about 50,000 feet, at least from what the zoning ordinance allows. It does allow a reduction in parking, but it also allows for other provisions by special permit to identify private parking within 300 feet, that's by how they say it flies by the crow's nest, and also within 1,000 feet of a municipal parking lot. So we will explore those with them so that it's not just X 45 minus X on the property and then say, well, it's a free-for-all. We don't operate that way. We'll make sure that to the extent practical, they'll be able to find parking elsewhere. And we've done that with every single project that comes down the pipe, so.
Can I follow up?
Yeah, absolutely.
So what concerns me is the word encourage, because this is what happened with the Jewel, right? They were supposed to have parking elsewhere, and that fell through. So again, people that are living there are unhappy with the parking situation, can't find parking, so on and so forth. So this is concerning to me that we're going to be in the same situation, and if they're looking for tax breaks for money purposes, then for them to purchase or rent or whatever another parking lot in the area, like when you say the word encourage, like we can't make them do that.
Right, we can't compel them, but if I may respectfully disagree, I don't think any parking agreement fell through. They did file affidavits with the Board of Appeals identifying the parking space. So for the Jewel, they did come through, so that didn't fall through.
They weren't supposed to have that extra parking space, the parking lot, I can't think of.
Sure, so, yeah, I don't think anything fell through, because had they, that would have been a violation of the decision, and we would have addressed that, so.
We're going to lease it or something to that
Yep,
effect.
so I will absolutely follow up if you like, afterwards with the board, with the decision, but I will tell you categorically on live TV that parking requirement didn't fall through the cracks, that they did follow up. In fact, they submitted a document that the staff and the board, we weren't, well, at least let's go with the board. It's irrelevant what the staff thinks, but it's very relevant what the board thinks, that it was unsatisfactory. We went back, and they ultimately filed affidavits signed by the residents securing their off-street parking. So we did follow through up on that. So they do have the parking. But again, please understand the complexion of where the development is happening. We are encouraging smaller units. We are encouraging, more affordable units downtown that is less reliant on the vehicle and more reliant on walkability, given the proximity of all these developments that we're talking about near the MBTA station. Still New England, I still get it. People still, they want to see where they're going and they want to drive a car. But I will tell you that I see the pendulum absolutely swinging toward a smaller number, And I will tell you, with hopefully, if not this summer, but certainly by the end of the summer, we'll be hopefully either through the planning board, the zoning board, or both boards, presenting kind of an overhaul, if you may, of the off-street parking requirements for the city that I think will be an eye-opener. It'll be an education. We'll have plenty of backup documentation to demonstrate to the council why we believe that reduction is warranted. But right now, I get it, it's by regulation, you need X number, but I think as a result of the applicant maximizing, or I should say optimizing the number of parking spaces that they, off-street that is, podium parking, and working with staff and other private property owners for parking or municipal parking lots, I think we're hitting that number as best as we can. And I can also throw this out, we can't compel residents where to park. So they could be parking on the premises, and they just want to park on the street, on-street parking, and there's a certain degree of congestion. As long as we require or we can set aside parking for all the cars, ultimately, people are going to park wherever they want.
Understood, but we're also bringing in, 45 units with, we don't know how many people and how many family members and how many cars. So
Yeah.
it's concerning regardless. I know we can't compel people and force them where to park, but bringing in this amount of people with the lack of parking we have is a concern. But I won't take up, I know that this is a committee meeting for Council Kovas, so I won't take up the time, but I'm sure we can discuss it.
Okay.
Thank you. Counselor Holmes?
Thank you. So it says market rate residential units. Is there any way to encourage them to have some affordable units from
So-
the city standpoint?
Yeah, so unfortunately, the entire purpose behind HDIP and tie is to encourage market rate. So you actually can't apply a tie to a unit that's in any way, shape, or form affordable. So that would be why the entire unit is market rate residential, or development, I should say.
Perfect. Actually, Gary, before you sit down, and I hate to put you on the spot a little bit, but, and I probably should have looked this up before, remember the tax increment finance zone that we created, that zone where a portion of, where if we develop.
The diff? The diff?
District, yes.
Yeah, district,
increment,
yeah, yes.
Does this fall within that zone? No?
I'd have to check.
Okay.
I'd have to check.
And I
Last thing I
apologize
want
for
to do is
putting you on the
speculate
spot.
and mislead.
no,
I'd
that's
rather
fine.
check and shoot you guys, or everyone an email tomorrow. I honestly.
Okay. And I didn't mean to put you on the spot.
That's okay. I don't recall off the top of my head, honestly.
And if it did, if for those that don't recall, that was where if we develop property within this district, the increase in value would be put towards a parking structure was some of the things that we signed off on, if you guys recall. And so it would be interesting if this fell within that area, if some of the increment was set aside and saved towards that, because where we were talking about the parking.
So I would say if the answer to the question is yes, that it is in the DIF district, and even though the council would be voting to ratify the HDIP agreement, both programs would apply,
Interesting, okay.
Yeah.
right? Yeah.
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah,
So
both
that's
would
something
apply.
that's something me and Gary have actually been talking about a little bit about, how we would layer a diff on a tie or something like that.
Right.
I don't think it's in the district. I'm like 90% certain it's not, because that's very focused on the TOD itself. So
This is
that's
outside the TOD?
yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's a
Got
little
it.
further up.
Yeah, this is in the central business zoning district.
Yeah.
Okay.
But again, if they were, we could still do it to both. So they're not mutually exclusive programs.
Okay, thank you.
Of course.
And Council Sawyer?
Thank you.
Yes, thanks a lot, man.
I have a hard time with this because we have a housing crisis, especially for families and lower income residents, and giving a tax break to a development that's not going to be doing any kind of affordable housing, I don't agree with that, and I wouldn't be for this, that reason.
I can absolutely understand that reservation, and I'd only respond by saying that one of the reasons that we struggle with the cost of housing affordability in the Commonwealth is that we've suppressed development for so long that demand and supply are completely mismatched. So part of that, yes, is absolutely going to be developing affordable units, and we are looking to do that where opportunities allow. The former Attleboro High School is a great example of that. But part of it is also developing market rate residential housing, and sometimes in areas where it would not otherwise be financially feasible, and that in a more natural manner helps to sate the demand that's out there and draw down the cost as the two come, as supply and demand come further into compliance with one another.
Councilor Waterman, then Councilor Fogg.
So I won't belabor the point that's already been made about parking, but I consider that a huge problem. I would particularly suggest that you have you interface with the Council on Aging.
Mm-hmm.
This will have an impact
Okay.
on top of the impacts that have already occurred. And although we have opened up enough parking at the library for seniors, there's a lot of seniors that can't walk that far.
Yep.
So I wish you would look into that with the Council on Aging.
Absolutely. I can reach out to them and ask for their opinion and input on that. Absolutely.
Thank you.
Councilor Fogg.
Thank you. I noticed that this building and none of the others, as far as I can tell, has any commercial space in it. If you're building a building downtown, wouldn't it make sense to have some businesses in these buildings? Something other than a restaurant?
Ground floor retail is always something that we push, or I should say non-residential is always something we push for. Often it's not something that pencils out. It can take a while to fill. It's not as surefire an investment as housing is, and it doesn't attract the same kind of rents. So I think for a smaller project like this one, where it's more of a boutique developer who's coming in and doing something that's 30 to 45 units, often you're going to see fully residential in that type of development. We're talking about something like the TOD or something that's on a larger scale. That's something where we really push for ground floor retail and try to get something in there that can really activate the space for that juxtaposition.
Well, may I?
Yes, please.
You speak about it being near things like grocery stores, but there isn't a grocery store that you can walk to from this location, so then you need a car. So it raises the issue, and if there were some commercial space, grocers, bakers, shoemakers in these spaces, then you really are solving it and creating a much more vibrant downtown. I would urge you to think about it, if not in this space, in the next one.
Absolutely.
But there has to be some non-residential development in these buildings.
And it's something we're always looking at. I mean, one of the things I love about Attleboro is we do have a very vibrant, downtown commercial center. We are fortunate. We have, I know it's on the other side of downtown Attleboro, but we have USA Foods over here, which I frequent on a fairly regular basis. And I know they have a grocery store a short drive over the tracks on the going over the other side. Like I said, I think a lot of these developments, 45, half that's 22. So if you have a good number of people who are going like, hey, we only need one car, that does sort of pencil out. I do think, like you were saying, there might be some concern over some additional overflow parking, and that's something that the other boards and committees are going to look at. But I think that's the sort of situation where somebody could go like, okay, we're back from work now, we can go out together, do some grocery shopping, then come back. Or something like that.
Councilor Lavoy, and go ahead, Councilor Lavoy, but we should try to keep it the questions tied to the tie.
I will. Okay, thank you.
Sorry.
So I'm pretty pro-development, but I personally don't think that this looks good on paper. I'll keep the parking out, though I think that's a major problem. Having lived at 1 Wall Street, I can attest that the theory of 1 car per unit, however many cars, that doesn't check out. Just go to the T station at night, you'll see 30 cars in there, people paying to park there from the Wall Street. The thing I don't really like about this is with the break, the average family in there will pay $1,193 per year towards the city of Attleboro, using the same amount of services, if not more, than every homeowner in Attleboro. So, I mean, they're getting, and obviously they're not paying it direct, but that's about a 60 to 80% discount on a city service.
I'm not certain they'd be paying more, because you are talking about, high-density development. So, they're not watering their lawn. They don't have the same level of utilities or hookups that a single-family home would have. When you say more, I'm just trying to parse
But I
out.
think I would attest to the fact that the larger buildings demand, by right, more out of our fire department. So they call for more firefighters, and we've heard it from Chief LaChance. If you want to negate that, that's totally fine. But when we build these structures, we're asking for more firefighters in principle. We might not do it as a city, but that's what's called for in a response, God forbid there's an issue or a crisis there. Primarily because when there's a fire alarm goes off, the elevators by right have to go offline. So now you're asking if there's somebody on the 4th floor who can't come down, elderly, whatever the case may be, they have to carry that person down. And that's part of the process of why it calls for more firefighters.
Yeah, and I can absolutely appreciate that. The site itself, it would need more attention from, the fire department in an emergency situation. But that's still being spread across a larger number of per capita individuals. So from an efficiency standpoint, that's where I sort of come in and say it wouldn't cost as much per person or per family as a single family development. But we can absolutely reach out to the fire department and collect any input they need. There is actually going to be a department head meeting coming up on this, I think, next week or the week after. Oh,
Yeah,
sorry,
right,
here.
sorry.
Yep, the week after, and fire and police are part of that too, so they absolutely have an opportunity to opine on this, irregardless of the tie, to make sure that it's done in a safe and effective manner.
Perfect. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Gary, do you want to chime in on that?
Yeah, I was just gonna say,
because
well-
that's different than my understanding, where my understanding was children in schools and single-family houses.
Thank you for the opportunity,
Cost
Council
more to the
Hovis.
city,
Yeah,
yeah.
so there are 2 points. Let's talk about the per capita cost, and the other question was about fire department response. So I've done a number of cost-benefit analyses, impact analyses, and the cost, the per capita cost, and I use the per capita cost multiplier. It's the most factual, empirical technique there is. It's from Liskington and Burchell. There are a number of techniques to use, but I always use the per capita multiplier because it's mathematical. There is mathematical certainty in the conclusion, so it takes away like the case study technique, which is somewhat subjective, depends on your inputs, and the output is a function of the input. This is mathematical, and I will tell you, the cost of an apartment in downtown Attleboro, whether it's a condominium, a lease, or rent, the per capita unit cost of the city is considerably less than a single-family detached one-family dwelling, whether it's a 2-bedroom, a 3-bedroom, or 4-bedroom. And the statistics that I use isn't just even for the Northeast corridor, it's actually for New England. I have the most recent data, and again, I respectfully disagree that those numbers don't even compare. You're probably looking at order of 1.3 children, school-age children. This even breaks it down from kindergarten, junior high school, and high school, but let's just talk about a blended number. It's roughly 1.3. If you're looking at an apartment building in downtown Attleboro, you're looking at about 0.875 in terms of students per household. And just think, also, just because you'll have, let's just call it an even 40, doesn't mean the first day you move in, everyone's coming in with, 2 people and a child. I mean, that's over time. So I wasn't asked to do an impact analysis, so I didn't present anything or I didn't calculate anything, but I would challenge that premise. Secondly, every single project that comes through the planning board or zoning board, those all go out to the fire department, every single one. And we did have recent concern about a previous project. It was a proposed 9-story building. The fire department expressed, I'm going to say, some grave concerns about response, given the height of the building, its ability with the equipment it has. That was conveyed to the developer, and before you knew it, we went down from a 9-story building down to a 6-story building. I'm not going to necessarily say that it was the fire department's response in terms of a critique or a criticism. I think there were other variables involved in that decision by the developer, but nonetheless, it got put down to a 6-foot building. So I cannot think of a single project right now that comes through my office that we don't sit down with at least a fire prevention officer and comb through everything, not just the building itself, access, alarms, circulation. When you pull into a podium, parking garage situation, the height of the ceiling, if you may, for their ability to get access to it, making sure always that there are every 3 points of access to the building, that there's sufficient width. Those are just off the top of my head, but if we get into the actual forensics, I could go on and on. So again, I respect your opinion. I just say I'm speaking from experience and not necessarily from, oh, we'll work it out with them. I mean, my feedback to you is very practical experience that we work on with them literally every week, every week, whether I call the fire chief, the fire prevention officer, or other lieutenants and staff at the fire department. They're excellent. They're always writing reports. We have good communication with them. So I respect the concern. I just want to let you know that we address all that. And until the fire department's satisfied, it doesn't get through the staff until we get to the zoning board to make sure that they're satisfied with our input and that of the fire department. And it actually transcends all the departments: water, wastewater, inspection, public works, health, so forth. Thank you.
President Delicio?
Thank you. So Chris or Gary, so what happens, what's Plan B if the tie fails?
I don't really think there is a plan B as far
Because
as the developer's
Paramount
concerned,
already,
yeah.
I mean, Paragon already owns the property, right?
Yep,
So we'd be looking at just a
most likely, yeah.
private property parking lot where we're only getting.
Yeah.
Well, I don't want to
35,000.
speculate that's going to be a parking lot. We just
Well,
don't
saying
know
what it is currently, right?
Well,
Right
that's a
now?
parking lot because it was an accessory parking lot to the paper.
Correct.
I'm inferring, and maybe I shouldn't, that your definition of parking, that it's a commercial parking lot. That wasn't the
Nope.
case. But I also don't want to speculate, with all due respect to my colleague, what Paragon's plans are if it were to fail. Just looking at the numbers, it doesn't work.
Right.
So,
So I think there's a lot that we have to think about here, because I think there was the parking, certainly, I think some of the concerns raised were valid, but I think when we look at, without the project, it's 34,000 in tax revenue, whereas with the tie, you're looking at 805,847. I mean, it's a big number to look at, especially when we have some big projects coming up. We all talk about growing the tax base, so I think there's a lot to think about, but I think we have to take a look at, potentially, if this tie fails, where are we? What does that do to Paragon? So I'm not saying I'm in favor of this, or I'm not right now. I think I have more questions that I want to have answered, but I just think when we look at, really dollars to donuts, it's a choice to be made.
And with respect, I believe what is in front of us now is the tie, and the parking aspect of it is in front of the planning board. That is not what we're being asked to review.
And that wasn't my statement at all. I just said I share the concerns that were raised.
You and I
My
both.
bigger point was about what's Plan B, what's going to happen, because when we talked about their other project, it was, remember, there was a hole in the ground, and we're going to have a crater. So that was part of the discussion. I think there's a lot to think about. Historically, I haven't been a huge fan of ties for several reasons, or TIFs. It's tough. They're in a situation where it's kind of putting the cart before the horse, but they almost need to in order to figure out if they can get the project. So there is a lot to think about.
again, this is a classic example of governmental intervention that without, or that but-for argument, it doesn't happen. And all I would respectfully ask is, for a quick second, or more, if you want to just put on your planner's hat and just watch this visual. You've got 27 South Main Street, potentially 41 South Main Street. You've got Christopher Heights. You've got Renaissance Station North. You've got 1 Wall Street. Just imagine, as residents of the city, 15 years ago, what that looked like. That's not even to take into consideration what the redevelopment authority with the ED office is working on with the TOD. I mean, that's what we're looking at. So, of course, there are going to be some issues, little forensics that we got to figure out with the boards. And I know The council has the utmost respect for the boards, and we always tend to work those out. But just big picture, that's what we're looking at, folks. So just not to lose sight of that. Not the fact that you were, but sometimes you want to explicitly make the statement, so rather than thinking it's just implied, so.
And Gary, one of the things I remember 8 years ago when I started on the council was talking about how strategically valuable places like Sky Rock were for attracting these types of buildings to the downtown area.
Again, Council,
and now,
yeah.
all of a sudden they're popping up.
It's this massing of residents, injection of disposable income. You might say, where is it? Council Forward, Toyota, where are the groceries? You know, again, Chris and I have this conversation, we wish we had in our sleeves that Trader Joe's was gonna go here, or the, what's the coffee place?
Starbucks.
Starbucks is gonna go there. It doesn't work that way, unfortunately.
in all
So,
of those.
right, it's the massing of residents, disposable income, and not to suggest that we're whimsically waiting and crossing our fingers that the economic development will happen. We're beating the drum on that back end too. We push hard for every residential project, Council Forward. Where's the non-residential? Just right out of the gate, where is it? Of course, they come back with that issue of trying to create more retail in downtown, and it's difficult. But let me reassure you, between Chris and I, we're always pounding for that. And you got to be careful, right? It's a dance. You don't want to push too hard where they go, well, we're just going to take our ball and go home. Now what? So we push them as hard as we think we can. And sometimes they might not be able to occupy the entire first floor, but some foothold. So we try for that. But yes, again, to your comment, Councilor Cobus, thanks for is we got to get that massing in, and I'm telling you, at some point it'll come, and on top of what we try to encourage, but you need that disposable income for people to recognize. We might even say, not even think of something, and an entrepreneur just driving through and say, wow, I never noticed that before, and come and speak to us about opening, a potential store in the downtown. But it's all tied together. It's all tied together.
There any other comments regarding this or questions for our guests? Hearing none. Thank you both for being here.
Thank you very much.
This was very good. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions or discussions regarding the tie? I'm comfortable moving forward and voting it out. I am supportive of this. I encourage everybody to support this. I think it's a really good thing. I know I've heard everybody. I know I've talked about, like, we need to develop downtown, and I've heard people talk about that time and time again. I think this is part of it. I'm very supportive of this. I think it's a good thing. I think without it, we miss out on $800,000 in tax revenue, and more importantly, apartments downtown. I think the supply and demand argument was a great thing. With, even though they're market rate, I think it adds supply, which ultimately will potentially bring down sort of the cost for other apartments in town. So overall, I do think it is good for our residents, good for keeping Attleboro affordable, good for things across the board. I do recognize and understand the hesitation for any kind of tax breaks in general. I recognize that. I do think this is valuable for developing downtown in general. So I encourage people to support it. If people are nervous about moving forward tonight, I'm happy to rescind the second and practice the pause, but I don't need to, and I'm open to having more of a discussion. So Councilor Tavares, any?
Yeah, I agree with you, Councilor Cobus. I have no reservation about this either, and there's just a couple things that I've been writing down just as we've been, as the questions have kind of flowed through, and Chris and Gary have articulately, answered a lot of these concerns. But yeah, I mean, number one, I think just moving forward with an agreement like this with the developer will help to, I think, ultimately support our businesses downtown. We talk about getting more foot traffic, and it's always a chicken and an egg thing, right? I mean, we do have businesses downtown, but how often do we see businesses downtown that are there for a year, 2 years, and they're gone, they disappear, right? And I understand there's various reasons for that, but I think one of the things that we can do to help our business community is to continue to grow that foot traffic, and that means continuing to grow more density. I'm a big proponent of that, and I think the demand for other types of businesses down the line will come, whether they're grocery stores or other things down the line, and I think that is important as well. But I think you have to show that demand, I think, also for as Gary mentioned, potential entrepreneurs to start to look at the area a little bit differently than maybe they have the last year, 3 years, 5 years, right? So that's important. And being someone who's in the real estate industry, I can tell you that there's this issue of a shortage of housing isn't new. It's been exacerbated by COVID and many other factors. Obviously inflation and other things over the last couple of years, but this has been a problem for at least the better part of 10 years. And so this is something that's, I think, continually gotten worse, and I think that's one of the biggest reasons that housing prices continue to go up. And you see developments in other parts of the country, and people complain about development in the Northeast, but honestly, it's nothing compared to the way development happens around the country. And I think we've seen a severe shortage of more housing units. And again, that's another thing that's keeping these prices elevated. And I think it's very difficult to see a stabilization of those prices without increasing the supply. As President Delisio mentioned earlier, I mean, at the end of the day, this is providing more absolute tax dollars, right? I mean, we're getting less than we would otherwise, right, without the tie agreement, but that's not really the comparison. It's whether the question is whether we allow this tie agreement to move forward or not. And as Gary mentioned, sure, we can speculate as to maybe what other projects could go there, but at the end of the day, it's a dollars and cents analysis, right, that a developer is going to have to make, and there may be a point where it's just not worth it for them if they can't get a certain number of units or a certain type of development there to at least recoup the costs. I work with developers every day, and I can tell you that the last 2 years it's been very difficult to build because of interest rates, because of inflation, a lot of different factors. So there's a lot of developments that are not moving forward because of all of those rising costs. Insurance and taxes is a big one. That's an interesting one in a lot of parts of the country. I'm seeing all sorts of very unique tax agreements going on with local municipalities or counties to reduce those long term, because that's a huge expense for an operator over time on their affecting their net operating income. So sometimes it can be the difference between, as Gary and Chris mentioned, doing the project versus not, right? So I mean, I could go on and on about this, but at the end of the day, I'm in favor. Likewise.
Thank you. Does anyone else have comments before we vote this out of committee?
So, thank you.
President Delisio.
I just want to clarify what my stance was, right?
Sure.
So what I was saying is, what's the plan B, what happens? Current state, it is a parking lot, commercial or otherwise. I'm just saying, current state. My lean right now is very aligned with yourself and Councilor Tavares. I think we have to look at how downtown living has changed. I think you bring up a really cogent point about bring the people and the businesses will ultimately come. Businesses aren't going to want to invest in a community where there is no one that's going to be coming down to patronize them. I think that you have the bus and the rail right there within walking distance. The taxing for me is, the tie is 15 years. Doesn't mean that after 15 years they're no longer paying taxes. They're going to continue to pay taxes. I think that there is a lot to think about. The parking, I get it. I have some questions that I'll probably give Gary a call in the upcoming week or so. But I think when we look at some of the other downtown structures like this, I think what's going to be attractive to it is for those that don't have cars, that those commute, that, whether we like it or not, there's a subset of our population that views Attleboro as a bedroom community. They come, they go, they come home, Now, let's give them a Burgundy and a Skyrock, something like that, a Moran's, where they can have something to do. But this is all inclusive, and I think you were spot on when you talked about how we can help the business community with something like this. So that's where I was kind of coming from. The last thing I'd say is the EDIB, you know, you think about who's on there. You have the mayor on there, you have Gary, you have Chris, you have Julie, you have Laura. I mean, these are the minds that know what's going on. And these are the people that we trust with our finances from several different levels. And I think, Jonathan, to hear your perspective coming from that industry, I think says a lot. So I just want to thank you for the opportunity to clarify, because that's what I was talking about.
Perfect. I think this has been a great discussion, and I think we're ready to vote. So all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Hearing none, motion passes. All right. Thank you both very much. Appreciate it. All right. Let's go back one. From the docket of June 3rd, 2025, I entertain a motion to transfer $45,000 from account 11241-000-578-300 citywide reserve fund for transfer to account 11241-000-521-030 citywide streetlights in order to pay invoices for the remainder of fiscal year 25.
Second.
Motion is in order. In talking to Mason, it costs roughly $45,000 a month to pay for to keep the streetlights on. There was a 7%, roughly a 7% increase in utility costs for the year, and so this is just to pay for the final month for when the utility bill comes in. That's all. Any questions? Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes. Next item. I entertain a motion to transfer $58,000 from account 11241-000-578-380 citywide reserve fund for capital to account 12101-000-587-060 police vehicle and equipment replacement.
Oh, second.
Motion's in order. All right, so this one, where did my paper go? This is to fund a fourth police vehicle. There is, the vehicle costs approximately $69,000. We have, so first of all, every year we buy 3 police cruisers every year. The police chief does a great job purchasing 3 vehicles every year. Periodically, we need to buy a 4th vehicle. We have funds available right now in the reserve fund for transfer, and we have $21,000 still available in the police cruiser budget. Some of the cruisers are hitting that 100,000 mile mark where we really need to replace them. This will allow us to purchase a 4th vehicle for the year and get that ordered now before the prices go up and before other communities start ordering their vehicles. So it allows us to get it in before the end of before the new fiscal year when everybody's ordering them. And so the $58,000 gets added to $21,000 that we already have in the police cruiser budget for so it's $79,000 overall for that 4th cruiser. Does that all make sense? Mm-hmm. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. So I'm just curious from a planning standpoint, is this something, if you know, I don't know, that the chief sort of plans to do on a
every 3 or 4 years?
Yeah, see how kind of things go and sort of strike while the iron's hot, so to speak, when there's opportunity and funds.
I forget when I think that it was roughly 2 or 3 years ago the last time we did it. I don't remember exactly the last time. President Delicio, do you recall exactly when the last time? I don't.
I don't, if it was 2 or 3, but this is something that's very deliberate by the chief. The way the chief approaches this is very prescribed. A lot of communities, for instance, they'll keep their cruisers on the road 24/7. Kyle does 16 on, Adolph, right? Because that expands the lifetime. He's planned for these, he always has, going back to when I was a police commissioner, Jesus, 10 years ago, probably longer. So, I mean, it's very deliberate. He's very cognizant of the impact to the taxpayer, and he looks at these different ways to address this.
Yeah, that's
If I
all.
may follow up.
Please.
Yeah, no, I think this is a great idea from, I think what you described. I was just more curious if this is sort of something that maybe isn't necessarily worth, this fourth cruiser isn't necessarily worth making a rigid sort of policy, hey, every so many years we're going to do this fourth cruiser, but more of a, obviously the chief understands his budget inside and out, but to take the opportunities when they come up to sort of find the right time to incorporate additional vehicles, and that's kind of what it feels like to me, because the policy is 3 years, so I get that, makes total sense, and so it just seems like this this fourth one is okay. It makes sense now, but not necessarily that it might make sense next year or the year after. But it does right now.
So the plan is not to buy 4 a year. The plan is 3 a year, and it was clearly expressed that this is not a change to that policy, which was the thing I wanted to make
And I'm
sure.
not suggesting that that's how I understood it.
Okay.
I guess I probably should have said that a different way, not
Sure.
next year. But what I'm saying is it sounds like this is sort of, if there are one-off opportunities that's what's coming before us at this point, right? So it might not be uncommon to see something like this again, maybe in another 2 or 3 years or something
Correct.
similar, right? I guess that's kind of where I was going with this, is that this is sort of a loose part of the policy to be able to sort of take advantage of opportunities like that. So, but
Yes,
I don't want to
and we
belabor
have
the
seen
point,
this.
so they understand.
And we have seen this in the past where he has taken advantage of this, and that's why I was saying it was either 2 or 3 years ago. And
Yeah, that makes sense. That
yeah.
would probably predate my time, but I appreciate
Yes.
that.
Any other questions there? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, motion passes. All right, from the docket of June 3rd, 2025, I entertain a motion to authorize the school department to obligate up to $495,000 of its fiscal year 25 net school spending appropriation towards potentially net school spending eligible expenditures.
Non-net school.
Sorry, excuse me, non-net school spending eligible expenditures.
Second.
Motion is in order. So this one was interesting. So my question with this one was, hey, why 495,000 when you only provided 267,000 worth of backup information? So this is to purchase new switches and wireless routers for Willett, as well as tractors and a new pickup. It's for roughly $267,000 worth of equipment. Sorry, it's $495,000 worth of equipment. Of that, a large portion of it is paid back by the E-rate funds, so that we get a portion of it back. So for the new switches are $230,000. Of that, the final cost to us is $92,000. But we have to appropriate the full $230,000 up front. So that's why we have to, obligate $495,000, of which ultimately the city's only going to be on the hook for $92,000 of the $230,000 for the switches for the schools, and then for the wireless routers for Willett, those are $150,000, of which will the E-rate policy will cover the vast majority of it, and we'll only end up paying $60,000 of that $150,000. Does that make sense? So this is a great use of taxpayer funds, But it was a little bit confusing that we had to obligate $495,000 upfront. Does that all make sense?
Yeah, so at the end of the day, we're obligating $495K, and
But only
essentially
using
about
two-
$150K is what we're paying net at the end of the day, once. the dust settles.
267 is what we end up paying.
Got it,
total.
other way, flipped.
Yes.
Okay, understood, thank you.
Yeah. Okay. Any other questions there? All right. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes. All right. I entertain a motion to transfer $113,850 from account 112410000-578 380 Citywide Reserve Fund for Capital to account 112410000-599 300 Citywide Transfer to Capital Fund, and to further transfer $113,850,000 to fund 3578499 Balfour Bridge, transfer from general fund.
Second.
Motion is in order. For this one, we had requested, so the original bid we had for the Balfour Bridge was $244,000. The mayor declined to go through with that. There was only sort of one bid that came in. Held out, sent it out for bids again. We received multiple bids. The low bid came in at $99,000 for this Balfour Riverwalk repair. I think there were three competitive bids, and the administration has been doing really well at really sort of shopping around and getting competitive bids, as we saw also with the the trash contract that's coming in. But so with this, the administration received three competitive bids. One of them came in at $99,000 for this, which was significantly less than the original bid for $244,000. And then with the 15% contingency, the administration is asking for $113,850 for the Balfour Riverwalk work. And if you recall, this was something that we asked for on our capital improvement plan when we were talking about that 2 weeks ago. So I think it makes sense to move forward with this, and it's at a price that is less than what was in the capital improvement book. So, any other questions? Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes. And then we skip down to the next one about the special assistant to the mayor. From the docket of May 6th, 2025, I entertain a motion to strike the amendment for the special assistant to the mayor.
Second.
Motion is in order. I received a email from Mayor DeSimone asking me to strike this. She, based on the way the budget is and where everything was so tight with the budget, and she would like to rethink this and rework this request. And she felt that now is not the right time to be moving forward with this. And I recognize that, and I respect her wishes, and so based on that, I want to move forward with striking this request for the special assistant to the mayor. Any questions with that? This is based on the mayor's request. And Mayor, do you want to comment on that at all, or like you don't need to, but like.
I'm happy to if people have questions, but
Yeah, I mean, I thought it was pretty straightforward, and I recognize the budget's incredibly tight, and all that, and, does anyone have any questions, or, it's pretty straightforward? Okay. Counselor Farr?
I think there's a real need,
There's no question about the need,
and I wonder whether
and we all respect that.
if we reduced the work that is described here, limited it, and therefore perhaps also reduced the amount of money it would cost us to hire such a person, it wouldn't be worth it. I just am worried this is penny wise and pound foolish. The mayor can only go so many different, get stretched only so many different ways. That's my concern.
I would expect to see this again at some point, but any other questions, comments? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, motion passes. And based on that, I think we'll hold off on discussing the capital improvement stuff for another time. I think I've already used enough of everybody's time, so. Counselor Angelo is nodding. You're welcome. Move to adjourn at 7:45.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, we are adjourned.
The IT and Infrastructure Committee has no business this evening.
It's actually Councilor Angelo where he has guests.
Sorry to have spoken up.
We call Personnel Veterans Human Services Committee to order at 7:46. Council is present, Council Tavares, Council Waterman. I have a couple of guests tonight. First, I'd like to bring up Amanda.
Good evening, how you doing?
So name, address, and what you're going for, which is planning board.
Yes, my name is Amanda Saladina. I live at 156 Collins Street, Attleboro. I've been here for 5 years, and I'm happy to be here tonight to talk to you all about the vacancy of the volunteer on the planning board.
And just tell us a little bit about what brought you here and what you might be able to bring to the table for the planning board.
Sure. The 5 years I've been here in Attleboro, I've seen a lot. Being a new resident here, I'm from Massachusetts originally. I just moved back here from my career down in DC. So I wanted to get involved in local politics and government here to see where I can be a fit for any areas of which you guys need help with my varied background. Management, logistics, HR, analysis. I can be of help pretty much anywhere, so anywhere you guys need help, I'll be there.
I know Gary has spoken very highly of you and feels you can be a really good fit for the planning board. And any questions from councilors? Councilor Waterman.
Well, thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
What do you see as the primary challenges that you might be facing if you were on the planning board?
Being a newcomer, so I don't have the longevity that the previous person in this, that she had. So just learning pretty much. I did have a chance, as Michael pointed out, to sit with Gary and learn a little bit about planning initiatives and stuff like that. So that would be the challenge for me, but I do have a full-time interest in learning about it. I'm on medical disability retirement from the government, so I have nothing but energy and focus to learn more about the initiatives of the planning and how it goes forward in this beautiful city.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Councilor Tavares.
Hi.
So I'm just curious, are there any specific experiences in your career or anything otherwise that you'd like to highlight that will equip you to be a member of the planning board?
Sure, thank you. Yes, I've been part of a lot of reorganizations in the government sector as well as the private for the planning initiatives as well. So I've seen the trials and tribulations that go along with them, and the fundamental thing being communication as a big, huge gap for a lot of initiatives that I've seen where that's a strength of mine, communication. So I just have a background in those kind of areas as far as reorganizations go, where planning, communication, those things help those come to life. Does that answer your question?
All right. Thank you, Amanda. Appreciate it, and we'll be in touch with you.
Okay, thank you
All
all.
right, thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Next up, we have Dennis with the Water Superintendent.
Good evening, members of the council. Thank you for having me tonight. Dennis Morton, currently live in Charlton, Mass. Going to be moving to Rentham very, very soon. I have 26 years of experience in public works, the last 15 in different capacities, water superintendent, water sewer superintendent, operations manager, and director of public works for a couple of communities. My background is mainly water, and that's really what brought me to Attleboro, is the opportunity to get back to water. It's what I enjoy. I'm very comfortable in it. From treatment to distribution, I've done many projects, a lot of capital projects. I oversaw the construction of a 2.5 million gallon a day treatment plant with chlorine dioxide as the oxidant. So there's just a lot of different ways of oxidizing iron and manganese. I've done ozone. Very, very extensive background in capital. The last place I was at, I put together a 10-year capital plan for water, sewer, and highway. And kind of what led me to leave there was I put a lot of effort into putting together a capital plan, and they basically threw it in the trash on me. Said they couldn't afford it and didn't want to do it.
Sorry, I'm just handing out a few things for you guys. Just-
I'm excited to be here in Attleboro. I know there's a lot of challenges. I know there was a big challenge last year that is on everybody's mind. I can assure that I've talked to everybody. I understand what happened, and assure you that it cannot happen again. It will not happen again.
Dennis, can you talk a little bit about some of the things that you plan on doing, some of your future plans or comprehensive plans, for the future?
Sure,
what do you
sure.
expect to get out of, the water department? How are you going to take the water department from here to here?
So just already, I've been here 3 weeks, and I've put together a pretty extensive hydrant replacement program to address the 300 Corey hydrants. Talked to Mason about how we're going to put that plan together and pay for it. Looking forward to, there's a lot of big capitals. You've got a Wading River treatment plant that's getting ready to be constructed. There's a temporary that we're trying to get online. There's a lot of upgrades that need to happen at West Street. So I'm looking forward to working on those projects and putting together comprehensive plans. One of the upcoming things is our lead service line inventory. That's going to be a huge, huge number. Come 2027, we have to replace 10% of our lead or galvanized service lines. We roughly have about 2,000. So we're going to have to do about 200 a year, every year for 10 years.
Dennis, can you talk a little bit about your maybe obviously your management experience, how much you've had of that, and then, which is also a big thing, is you're going to deal with the union and your experience with labor negotiations and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah. So every municipality that I've worked in, I've had to deal with unions. Early in my career, I was a union chairperson, union steward. So I understand, the union stuff and how to deal with that. Personnel is very, very difficult and can be very difficult. So you have to understand the contract and how to work with the unions and get everything resolved.
So
And how many years have you had experience management over the years?
15.
15.
So I spent 7 years in Canton, 6 years in Plainville, and 10 months in Ware.
And 10 months in where you're leaving that because why?
I left that because there was no path forward. Everything that I put forward to move forward, they said we can't afford it. And basically the impression that I got from them was we're not spending any money, we're not doing anything. So I got the feeling that they wanted me to sit behind my desk and just be a person in the position with no real goals forward.
So can you talk a little bit about, we had Matt Crowdy come in, kind of solidified stuff, got things kind of calmed down, has done a great job. And can you kind of give us a little bit about like your plans with Matt and how you guys are going to work together and what are your plans off of Matt?
Yeah, so Matt's a great guy. Looking forward to working with him. And I think Matt, at some point, can be a great superintendent. I think he needs some more experience and some more time, and that's my goal, is to bring Matt along with me, teach him what I've learned over the last 15 years as a manager. I think that's important. I had a conversation with Matt, and I told him that I want him to be part of everything that I do. I want him to know what I know. It's the only way that we, as a team, can work together and progress the department.
Maybe, sorry, I got a million things I'm looking at right here. Well, maybe let's open it up to any of the councilors. President Delicio and Vice President Dolan.
Dennis, thanks for coming down. As you know, this is really important, high-profile position. You mentioned that what happened last summer, you would ensure wouldn't happen again. Can you walk us through your understanding of what happened, and then how would you ensure that it wouldn't happen again?
So as I understand it, is that they were looking to blend Manchester with Orr's Pond. There's a valve there that has an automatic setting and a manual setting. What happened was, because of the elevation of Manchester, the valve was put in auto. So as the water comes through the raw water building, it seeks a level. With that valve in auto, it was open at about 40%. So basically what was happening is the water was going through the building, and because of the elevation of Orr's Pond, it was actually going right back out the pipe into Orr's Pond and over the spillway. And by making sure that so what we've done is right now the valve from Manchester is password protected. I intend to talk to our SCADA engineer and possibly put an alarm into that it's going to ring out every 24 hours if that valve is put in auto. But I need to talk to them about how we can do that.
I appreciate that. Thank you. If I have a few, if I may. You talked about the comprehensive plan, and you're going to put together a comprehensive plan because, as you know, we have several capital improvements coming down the line. Can you talk a little bit about when you say comprehensive plan? Sounds great. What does that entail?
So it's just how we're going to get there, what the issue is, and how to address it, with a plan of how to accomplish it, how to pay for it, and how to bring it to completion.
So I'm glad to hear you say how to pay for it, because, you know, I was a little concerned when you said that you were in, was it Ware for 10 months, and they didn't let you spend money, so you kind of like them out. We could be in a situation where we might not have a ton of money to spend. Does that mean that, 10 months from now, we're back here with someone else?
No, I'm looking for, there's enough work, there's enough other things going on that if capital slows down, there's enough other things that we can keep moving forward on. As I said, they just wanted somebody to sit behind the desk, and that's really what they wanted.
Okay. Thank you. What are the sizes of the budgets that you managed in Canton, Plainville, and
Canton was just over $1 million. Plainville was right around $1 million. Ware was just under $1 million.
If I may, thank you. So what's your approach and experience, and what experience do you have in terms of changing a culture and building a team?
You know, it's about getting everybody to buy into the thought process. You know, I kind of equate it to, we have to climb a mountain, and we have to get everybody going in the right direction, the same direction, to reach base camp before we can start our climb. So that's going to be my goal, is getting everybody to buy in and work towards the same goal.
So what experience do you have in doing that as a follow-up? And also, how do you go about getting that buy-in?
So one of the things I did in Canton was they were dead set against replacing hydrants. We talked to the chief, and I got everybody to buy into how important it was. We replaced 200 hydrants in 2 years. They were afraid of having a hydrant flushing program because of dirty water. Within the first flushing program that we did, everybody was like, hey, we're not going out chasing our tails with dirty water calls, because we had a successful flushing program. Just being and talking and communicating to the staff, that they understand what is expected, what we need to do. That was one of the first things I've sat down with each one of the divisions and given them goals for the next year, what we want to accomplish. I have 2 more departments to sit down with to get them up to speed. Safety, bringing the safety stuff up to where it should be. I made sure that everybody on the distribution crew is wearing a hard hat, wearing their vest, cones, barrels, trench box. And that was one of the things I got pushed back on, was they didn't want to use the trench box. But it's about safety. I know Attleboro has lost a couple of people. I've been part of a loss of an employee on a mower. And it was just lack of safety.
Sorry to hear that you've been part of a loss. It's going to be devastating indeed.
It is very devastating. It's for the community, the department, everybody involved, the family.
Of course. If I may, just one more. Yes. What does success look for you, and what do you look like for you, and what are your priorities over the first 6 months?
So it's understanding the system, and that's important. I've got a pretty good grasp of it right now, but there's a lot of little nuances that I still need to learn. Getting to know the people, the ins and outs of what they do, how they do it, and changing that and getting it to be what Attleboro needs.
Just a quick follow-up to that. What do you feel Attleboro needs?
So it's just a department that works together. Again, as I've said, going in the same direction. I think right now people are kind of spread out and going in different directions. We need to be a team.
Thank you, and thank you for taking the time to answer the questions. I'm not trying to be difficult by any stretch. As I said, very important position. I have vast experience hiring frontline leaders in a very challenging industry. So I felt these are some important questions the public had as well as we needed to hear. So thank you.
Thank you, President DeSimone. Vice President Dolan.
Thank you.
Mayor.
Oh, sorry, my apologies.
Steve,
President
Italian last name.
Delicio.
Happens, Kathleen.
They're both with D's. Sorry.
So I just have 2 relatively quick ones. When you talked about management, so you're talking about supervising people. You've had people under you who are union members who you've supervised over the past 10 or so
Yes.
or more years, 15 years. I just wanted to clarify that. And then when I look at the job description, it says you need drinking water supply license grade D3 and T3, and you have both of those, right, on your resume?
Yes, I do.
I may have another one, but that's all I have for now. Thank you.
Councilor Lavoy.
Thank you. I have a couple, if that's okay with you.
Sure.
Thank you. First and foremost, you mentioned Attleboro needs sense of teamwork, working together. Do you feel, from your personal perspective, it's better to be the outsider coming in to create that, or the long tenured employee of 15 to 20 years? Like, how do you feel that that makes you the better fit for, in your words, what Attleboro needs?
Yes. So, one of the things is coming from a long-term position, being internal, you make friends. So I think that's very, very difficult to manage. And if you have to discipline somebody, to discipline them because they're your friend or they've been your friend. As an outsider, I don't have any relationships right now with any of the staff.
Yeah, can I follow up to that?
Sure.
So you said, was it Canton you started and worked your way up?
Yep.
Did you have management experience in Canton?
I did not. Canton was actually my first superintendent's job.
Okay. Were you ever in a supervisor role or anything like that there where you oversaw people that you were friends with at any point?
No, not there.
And then the other question I had was, what was the reason for the leave from Plainville? It seemed like you had put in some time there, so I was, I guess, curious of the reason on the leave. And then I also share the same concern as President Delisio, and I wrote it down here that, leaving for a financial strain or even just being in a chair, sitting in a chair, I'd hope that at some point Attleboro Water is in the position where someone might be able to just sit in a chair and monitor and ensure that we don't have all these massive projects, PFAS in our water, things like that. But I share the same concern because I know we have a large increase coming up, and depending on how this body votes on that, the budget could be very tight for the water department.
Mm-hmm.
And I think most of us here would agree we don't want to put someone in the position to then have to fill it again in a year's time, 10 months' time. So if you could, again, elaborate a little more on that, and, if down the road it means you're going to be sitting in a chair monitoring a well-put-together department, is that a concern? And then why you left Plainville as well?
So the reason I left Plainville, I had gone through a very, very difficult time in my life. I got a divorce, sold my house. I was struggling, and I felt I needed a change. That's really what happened. I don't think you're ever going to have in Attleboro somebody that just sits in a chair. There's always going to be things to do. There's always things to do, and that's what I've even tried to instill in the folks in operations, that maybe the plant's not running right now. Doesn't mean that we're just going to sit and watch a screen. We can get up and clean. That's one of the things I've asked them to do, is go through our conference room and go through all the drawings that were sitting there. Conference room is really, really clean. The hallway, they took time to scrub the hallway. Just not sitting there watching a monitor because the plant wasn't running. We still need to monitor it, but they're in the building, but let's do something other than watching the screen.
All right, I want to, thanks very much. To Councilor Lavoie's point, there is no way, I've been in Attleboro for 56 years, there is no way anybody's going to sit in a seat. This is never going to happen. Attleboro's been around for several hundred years. There is so much to do and so much improvement. It's never going to happen. But I want to read something. This came from our consultant that we all agreed upon and we hired to come in and do the water. And though we all got a copy of this, I want to read it out, and I want the audience to be able to hear it too as well. And this is coming from Rebecca McEnroe, who we hired, that's been down there. I write to express my enthusiastic recommendation for Dennis Morton as a candidate for Superintendent of Water for the City of Attleboro. After reviewing his resume and setting an interview, I am impressed by his exceptional qualities and abilities, which I believe make Dennis a standout individual for this management position. And bear in mind, I'm not reading this to sway anybody. I'm just trying to give everybody the facts and let everybody make their own decisions. After a career spent working, teaching, and consulting in the water treatment field, I have had the pleasure of serving as the city's water consultant during the past several months as the city search for a new water superintendent. I've gotten to meet and work with water department staff, evaluate department culture, and better understand its management needs. The city of Attleboro is fortunate to have a robust watershed, 2 water treatment plants, and many long-serving dedicated water department staff members. During my time working with the staff, however, the need for improved communications, which Dennis has touched on, additional training opportunities, and more positive work culture and a strong leadership became clear. I firmly believe that Dennis will bring established supervisory experience, a fresh perspective, and a new management style to the department, which will serve the city, water department staff, and the community. I particularly appreciate Dennis
Dennis's emphasis on training and accountability, which will yield long-term benefits to the city and to the department. Dennis's extensive experience in the water industry is just one of his strengths. For instance, Dennis has vast experience in assisting with water treatment plant startups, which will be beneficial based on the capital projects that are upcoming at the water department, obviously Wade and River. During his interview process, Dennis also demonstrated a high level of supervisory experience, communication, teamwork, and adaptability, which will help him foster a productive, positive, and collaborative work environment and improve improved department culture. I also was impressed by his professionalism, proactive attitude, and results-driven approach and deliver results that exceed expectations. In summary, I have full confidence in Dennis Moen's ability to support and advance the mission of Attleboro Water Department and to ensure that the city and its residents and business continue to have a steady supply of clean water well into the future. His skill set, work ethic, and character make him an ideal fit. I wholeheartedly recommend him without reservation. Sincerely, Rebecca McEnroe, P.E. McEnroe Consulting, LLC. Any other questions? Councilor Tavares.
Sure. Thank you, Mike. And thank you, Dennis. Question. So based on the budgets that you've managed over the years, I believe you mentioned earlier the last three towns in or around $1 million. Yep. Do you have any concerns or see any challenges managing a budget like Attleboro's around $11 million?
You know, it's just managing the money, you know, being stewards of the taxpayer dollar. That's really what it comes down to, is knowing what is a need and what is a want. I've had a few requests for things. I don't see them as being a need right now, more of a want. So it's just real important to pay attention to the budget and be good stewards of the taxpayer dollar.
Councilor Fuller?
Thank you, Councilor Angelo. And welcome.
Thank you.
Do you have any experience with state or federal regulatory agencies?
I've dealt with both DEP and EPA. One of the things I think that's important is I have a very, very good relationship and respect from DEP Southeast. I've dealt with them for many, many years now. Every system I've been in, it's been the Southeast. So I actually got a call from the chief last week and said he was happy to see me here.
Can you speak a little bit about you were a keynote speaker? Maybe
yeah, so I've done a few presentations with MWRA in Canton. We were both an MWRA user and we had our own treatment plants. We had 2 treatment plants. So we blended our water with them. And I did some emergency response training with MWRA at their Chelsea facility for 65 people, 3 different occasions. I also did a couple of presentations at New England Waterworks in Worcester for their spring conference. Those were both issues that we had in Plainville. We had a TTHM issue, and which is total trihallomethanes. And as we went through the issue, we were actually able to change some operational things that we were doing to alleviate the problem.
Councilor DeVoy?
Thank you. Appreciate you coming back to me. I just missed a follow-up that I didn't ask and wanted to. Could you just touch a little more on, I guess, getting employed by Ware? Was there maybe like false promises made? And my position is, how did you, I guess, not understand where they were going to see that department going versus what you wanted to see out of the department?
So yeah, it was some false promises. When I applied and interviewed, I expressed the concern to move things forward, move the highway department forward. Some of the issues were some drainage issues. I came up with a plan to fix those. They didn't have a treatment plant at all. They basically had well water that they put in the system. We had 40, 50 calls a day for dirty water. The only way that was ever going to change is if we put a filtration plant in. Also addressing PFAS. And when the number came in, they just said, no, we're not doing that. And I said, it's going to be forced. We have till 2029 to comply with PFAS. And they didn't care. They didn't want to do it.
Yeah, I get that issue. Even myself, I worked at a place and they promised me the world when I got there and quickly realized it was all a bunch of lies and I was gone in 2 months.
So we had one of the first council meetings that I went to. There was a 130-year-old water main, and they wanted to pave over it because it was downtown. I said, you can't pave over that main. You need to replace it. It involved a bridge crossing, which was owned by MassDOT. And when that number came in, they said, no, we just want to pave it. And I tried to explain to them that a lot of times when you do pavement, especially over old water mains and old services, that when you start rolling them and vibrating them, you end up breaking them, causing them to break. So brand new asphalt, and you're gonna have a water main break and dig up a brand new street. I mean, I've experienced that where they've done it, and within a day, we're digging up a brand new road because there was a break there. It's really important that we take care of the infrastructure.
All right, President Delicio.
Thanks. Just a few more as you were talking. I understand the importance of dealing with the union. I deal extensively with the union in my full-time job. Can you walk us through what your approach is with, how do you deal with the union? What's your approach to the union as a manager?
It's just putting out the expectations. What is expected of them? You know, as long as you aren't violating the contract, there is no grievance. As a union steward and a chapter chair, one of the things I always said to my people is know the difference between a grievance and a gripe. A grievance is a direct violation of the contract. A gripe is because somebody hurt your feelings or you don't want to do something.
Yeah, I think it's a little more in-depth than that. I think that's kind of an oversimplification, you know, I mean, dealing with the union, you know, I think it's gotta be about partnerships, and a lot of times it's about how is the CBA being perceived, how's it understood? So what might be a gripe to us could be a grievance, so that's something that I'm always looking for. How many years have you had as a water superintendent?
So I was 7 years in Canton as a water sewer superintendent. Plainville, I was 3 years as the water sewer superintendent, a year as an operations manager, and 2 years as the director.
Okay. And then the last one, Mike, if I may, is have you interacted with the fire chief yet? And why would that be an important relationship?
I have. So the last department head meeting, I had a conversation with him. I actually sent him my memo on the hydrant replacement. We have an upcoming meeting with fire, I believe it's tomorrow, to talk about the plan and what we're going to do for hydrants. So it's really important to, you know, the fire chief and everywhere I've ever been. It's been one of my first conversations is with the chief.
Good. I think that's an important relationship to have.
Yes.
Any other questions? Council Waterman.
So I live in the part of the city that's would be served by Wading River, and I may have the percentage a little off, but I think it's around 40% of the city. And what is your experience with PFAS? And feel free to go into that a little bit. And does that challenge, was that part of why you wanted to come?
Wasn't necessarily the reason I wanted to come. PFAS is a hot topic everywhere. And I think one of the biggest problems with PFAS is there's so many unknowns still with it. Mm-hmm. There's over 5,000 compounds of PFAS. We're regulating 6. So it's definitely going to be a challenge. Hopefully, there's some more science to go along with it. Right now, there just isn't enough science to go along with it. Right now, they're only regulating water. There's no regulations on food packaging that contain PFAS. Microwave popcorn bags, pizza boxes, M&M packaging. Those all contain PFAS. Clothing, anything non-stick, water repellent contains PFAS, some level of PFAS.
Food containers. Food containers.
Food, yeah. So, and unfortunately, water is the only thing that they're regulating.
All right, any other questions?
Well, as a follow-up, so it's quite possible in my mind that when we open Wading River, that you'll get some phone calls, I suspect, asking you questions about the PFAS, is it safe? And I assume that you have had that kind of experience with people who might be a little nervous?
Sure, sure.
Yeah.
I think the one thing that we have to remember is the water hasn't changed. The water's been the water forever. The only thing that changed right now is the regulation. PFAS has been around since the 40s. It was used in firefighting foams. And you know, obviously there's litigation going on with DuPont and a couple others to mitigate some of that in drinking water.
All right, any other questions? All right, seeing none, thanks, Dennis, appreciate it very much.
Very much.
All right.
Appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay. Let's see. For the docket of June 3rd, 2025, entertain a motion to approve the appointment of Joseph Parent to fill an expired term on the Board of Fire Commission's term to expire February 2028.
Second.
Thank you, Councilor Tavares. So basically, I did bring Joe down because Joe has been on the fire department for over 26 years. So I think he's earned and deserves our respect, and I think this will be great to have him on the Board of Fire Commissions. President Delicio.
Yeah, I've known Joe for some time. I agree. I think he'd be a great fit. Like you said, his background, also a veteran, so I think he brings that perspective as well. He's just a great guy.
Absolutely, couldn't agree more. All right, any other questions? All right, seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, motion passes 3-0. For the docket of June 3rd, 2025, entertain a motion to approve the appointment of Frank Cook to fill an unexpired term on the Board of Fire Commission's term to expire February 2026.
Second.
All right, thank you, Councilor Tavares. It was very tempting to bring Frank down, but I think we all know Frank, and we know his legendary status, being on the council for 18 years, from 2000 to 2018, and being council president as well. So another one that's deserves our respect, and plus he's got a lot of experience on the fire with an extended coverage and sprinkler systems and loss prevention and stuff. So Frank comes with a lot of experience in addition to his counsel and everything else that he's done in his time. So, any questions, President Delicio?
Just to add to that, also, while he was on the council, he was always a big proponent of public safety, but also his father was a firefighter, I believe, in Boston as well. So I think he brings that perspective to it as well as being a family member. So I think he'll, I don't know, this guy just can't sit still. Love to see it. I mean, he's a true asset to the community. So.
Absolutely. Couldn't agree more. Thank you, President Delicio. Any other questions? All right, seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, motion passes. From the docket of June 3rd, 2025, entertain a motion to approve the appointment of Amanda Soladina to fill an unexpired term on the planning board, term to expire February 2026.
Second.
Thank you, Councilor Tavares. We just heard from Amanda. I think she'll be just fine, and she obviously admits she's got a lot of time on her hands and looking to fill that time, and I think she'll be good. Sure. Any questions?
No.
Councilor Tavares.
Just a comment. I hope this ends up being a good fit if we do approve her for this volunteer position. But I would be lying if I said I wasn't a little concerned about her background and experience lending its hand to being a member of the planning board. That is not, in my opinion, I don't think that's the easiest board to join without having some sort of experience or background in either real estate related things, engineering, architecture, things along those lines. I think that and I'm not saying that someone necessarily has to have that background or necessarily that experience, but I think that's extremely helpful because there are a lot of technical decisions that have to be made. And I understand that the board relies a lot on the staff, Gary and his staff, in making those decisions and determinations. But the planning board, the ZBA, Conservation Commission, those are really important boards and commissions in the city. And from my perspective, I want to make sure we're putting people in those boards that truly understand the gravity of those positions and how important it is, the decisions that they make there.
Completely understand what you're saying and respect what you're saying. And had I not known that Gary interviews everybody that goes on there, and Gary doesn't take any of that lightly, and Gary signing off on it was good enough for me. And I do know Amanda just by talking to her, very personable, very very nice, and just got extremely nervous just from just a little bit of public speaking up here at that moment and stuff. But I think she'll be just fine. Councilor Waterman.
Well, we just met here at the podium,
Yeah.
but my take was that she's very motivated to learn,
Yes. Yeah.
and that encouraged me.
Yeah. Absolutely. All right. Oh, Vice President Dolan.
Thank you. And I just wanted to mention, I understand Councilor Tavares' point, and, you know, all these boards are extremely important, but just to mention that the current chair right now came on with no experience, Heather. She's the current chair right now, and she's been there for a few years, and she came here with nothing. And, you know, the staff, like you said, they rely on the staff. They're all very good teachers. And usually people that aren't a fit usually leave on their own, because usually they realize, you know what, this might not be for me, and I might not be an asset to this board. So, you know, when someone's willing to donate their time, you know, we can give them a shot.
Great
you
point.
know.
Councilor Lavoy.
Almost
I'm
got
tired.
promoted. It's
I'm
good.
tired.
Good times.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was gonna hold my comment, but I share the same comments as Councilor Tavares. Frankly, I wasn't overly impressed. I feel like we didn't really learn much about her, and the questions were kind of just dodgy to me, the answers rather to the questions. But understanding, like, volunteers are totally important. I think I, too, am just concerned with it being the planning board. Pretty challenging time. You know, many residents are not for development. Some are, right? We're seeing a lot of controversy coming up. And I do think it's important to add people that have the background, that understand the state law side of it, and the challenges, you know, that kind of go with maybe saying no or saying yes, things like that. But I don't want to discourage anybody from volunteering. I just wonder if maybe we should try to find something, you know, someone more fitting for it. I don't know. But that's my comment.
Well, I just, you know, the fact that Gary signed off on this and Gary did the interview process, and Gary is heard enough from her that he was satisfied with. I think it's good enough for me, and I'll support it. Vice President Dolan.
I'll support it as well, thank you. And also, you know, and I understand that people are looking for some type of experience, but I also believe too, when someone goes on the planning board that's already a real estate agent or a lawyer, or that concerns me as well. You know, because, you know, sometimes you think of people like that are anti-development or that are pro-development. So you have to have a balance on a board like this. And again, I know it's led by Gary and his staff. So I think having a balance, and again, you know, we all know and respect Gary. And if Gary is happy with her, then, you know, I say why not give her a shot? And again, people don't speak well in public.
Councilor Holmes.
Yes, I think.
Thank you, President. Vice President Dolan.
Thank you. It can be somewhat intimidating to speak before us, but to Councilor Dolan's point, there was somebody that joined the planning board a few years ago that had a development move in next to their home, and they joined because there was issues with drain, and so they joined as just a resident. So sometimes it's just the personal experience. I don't know if it just didn't, she was maybe a little intimidated presenting in front of us, and that's what happened here. But it can be a person that maybe doesn't have experience per se, but knows what it's like to have a development built next to their home, or some sort of experience of that nature. But it did feel a little bit like maybe she was intimidated or nervous. So that concludes my comments.
Completely agree. President Delicio.
Thank you. Thank you. So I think what's interesting is, I think, Jonathan, you know, you asked, you know, a question about, you know, what specific skill set. She didn't necessarily answer it, but I did miss the question when someone asked, what skills do you have with planning? No one asked her about her planning experience, right? So that's a miss on our part. Personally, being around long enough, I've seen that she talked extensively about some of her problem-solving skills, some of her other skills. I think she has a lot of the transferable skills. I thought she did fine. It's got to be intimidating. And I mean, standing on the other side of that podium in years past, you're staring at, in this case, 9 sets of eyes staring at you, not knowing what's going on. I do appreciate your comments, Councilor Lavoy, about, do we want to start really getting this nitpicky with volunteers? Because the volunteers are really the backbone of this government. I think that we're right to raise these concerns and ask these questions. That's what we're here for. And too often, we don't ask these questions. So I think this is the right conversation to have. And Chair Angelo, I agree. I mean, Gary's word, he's been doing this, 30-plus years. He's been on parts of, countless iterations of the planning board. And if this is someone that he feels that he can work with, that has the transferable skill set, I'm willing to give it a shot. But I certainly share the concerns that both of our colleagues raised.
I appreciate your comments, and I think if you work for the federal government in Washington, D.C., I think this is going to be a piece of cake. So, any other questions, comments, concerns?
I just want to contextualize my initial comments. This was in no way sort of picking on Amanda, so to speak, just for lack of a better way to say it. But one of the things that I just want to prevent and say publicly is I want to make sure that as counselors, and especially as a member of the personnel committee, is that we're not just rubber stamping people, right, into these volunteer boards and positions. And for sure, I am grateful for anyone who steps up to volunteer and to give of their time. To Councilor Dolan's point, it's not a small lift. It's a big commitment, and I recognize that. And the fact that people are willing to do that, we do need to recognize that. But I just want to make sure that there is a balance, because I think a lot of times we don't talk about asking the hard questions. To President Delicio's point, sometimes it can be uncomfortable coming from here as well. There are some questions I debate whether it's appropriate to ask or not, to be completely honest. Because on the one hand, you definitely don't want it to come across as intimidating to prospects for volunteer positions, but at the same time, we do want to make sure they understand the gravity of the position. That doesn't necessarily mean they have to have a direct, skill set that's applicable to the job, so to speak, but they have to show some sort of connection as well. So, but I'll leave it at that.
No, I appreciate the comments and stuff and everything, and to your point of rubber stamping, President Delicio could attest that we have not rubber stamped some and have gone through the ringer by not rubber stamping some. So yeah.
Pushback over the years.
But no, it's great. I appreciate all the questions and stuff, and I'll never have any problem with anybody's questions. And you guys have all raised a lot of great questions. President Delicio.
To Councilor Tavares' point, I mean, well stated, well done. I think a lot of us served with Rick Conti, who would always ask, and Peter Blair would always ask those tough questions. And I think we have every right to ask the questions to the point, like, it's not just a rubber stamp. But I think, this is a great conversation to have. It really is, because we don't have it too often.
Absolutely. Thank you. All right. Is that all? All right. All right, seeing no more questions, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, motion passes 3-0. For the docket of May 20th, 2025, entertain a motion to approve the appointment of Dennis Morton to fill a 3-year term of water superintendent, said term to expire February 2028.
Second.
Thank you, Councilor Tavares. RC, we just heard from Dennis. I love Matt. I love what he's done, and I want to support Dennis in the administration getting this taken care of. And we'll have time for next week to have a lot more questions and more discussions that we can talk about this some more, because obviously this is something very important to the administration, to the city, to the council, to all the citizens in Attleboro, that we do the right thing here, and because this is huge. It's our livelihood in here, and putting someone in charge of a lot of stuff right here. So if there's any other questions, by all means, let's hear it. If not, we're gonna have next week that we can have a lot more discussions, and not necessarily saying we have to pull it out or we have to vote on it next week, but we can certainly have a lot more discussions, and we can go from there.
Just a point of order, if you voted out of the committee, the discussions would be on the floor in front of the full council. I think if people have questions, want to digest what we just heard and saw, you could keep it in committee, talk about it in 2 weeks, give people time. It's up to you, but I just don't want to sit there and say, yeah, next week on the full council, we're going to have a full conversation. You never know what'll happen at that point.
The one comment I can make is I will not be here on the 17th because I'll be traveling for business.
Okay.
So that's, so other than that,
It's your committee, sir, so
Yeah.
however you feel.
yeah, so I mean, if I can ask a question to you, what harm would it be is voting it out now?
None really,
Yeah.
just in case, but then if other questions arise, we can try to get them before the full meeting next week.
Okay, all right, so let's vote it out then. Okay, all right, Council Waterman.
So one thing I was very impressed by is I felt he was very upfront. I didn't feel like he was hiding anything. We saw the real person that we met tonight.
All right, any others? All right, seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, motion passes 3-0. For the docket of May 20th, 2025, entertain a motion to resubmit the reappointment of Carrie Gray to the Council on Human Rights, term to expire February 2028.
Second.
Thank you, Council Tavares. So basically, Carrie just missed her time. She had some things going on, and I did later speak to her, and she is looking forward to being on the Council on Human Rights, and so we'll get her back down here. Council Sawyer.
I just want to say that Carrie Gray really is a great asset to the Council on Human Rights, and when she was there, when I was there, she was also as well, and she was a very good asset and not a rubber stamp for that committee. I really think that's a great place for her to be.
All right, great. All right, any other questions, comments, concerns? All right, seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, motion passes 3-0. All right, from the docket of May 6, 2025, entertain a motion to approve the addition of licensed independent clinical social worker, LICSW and SATS 3 position group to the classification and compensation plan.
Second.
Thank you, Councilor Tavares. So basically, we had the public hearing, we heard from Lynn Davin, and we talked about how much more important this is on a licensed independent clinical social worker, and this will be, I think it'll be good for the city. Councilor Holmes.
Thank you. So, an LCSW can basically graduate with their master's, take a test, and then that's what we were hiring. They're not prepared to do what's being required here, so I definitely feel an LICSW is more appropriate. This is an independent person that's gonna be able to help the city at a higher level. It just makes sense.
Couldn't agree more. And the fact with, hiring someone that's gonna have the experience is gonna be, for everything that's going on in this city, in this world today, right now, this is gonna be extremely important. Any other questions, comments, concerns? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, motion passes. That's all for Personnel, Veterans, Human Services Committee. I call for adjournment at 8:38.
Second.
Thank you, Council Tavares. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, motion passes 3-0. We are adjourned.
Sure. I don't know if we counted
Can't do
that.
that.
The license committee is canceled for this evening?
Cancel city property claims. Take where you're going.
I'd like to call Public Works to order at 8:38. From the docket of June 3rd, 2023, I entertain a motion to appropriate $11,183.09 from account 60003590000 wastewater enterprise fund retained earnings to account 600578020 wastewater enterprise fund bill from previous years to cover National Grid bill from the previous year.
Second.
Thank you. So they had paid their National Grid bill based on an estimate, and this is the amount that they were off on their estimate. Does anybody have any questions?
No.
Thank you. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes. From the docket of June 3rd, 2025, I entertain a motion to approve the following transfers for pickleball court improvements at Nickerson Park.
Oh, no, you want to continue? Second.
Yeah, I'm just gonna list them. $85,000 from account 163010005110000 recreation salary and wages full-time to account 163010005993000 recreation transferred to capital fund and to further transfer $85,000 to Fund 35434999600 Nickerson Park upgrade transfer from general fund. $1,500 from account 163010005155050. Recreation special licenses to account 163010005995300. Recreation transfer to capital fund and to further transfer $1,500 to Fund 35434999600 Nickerson Park upgrade transfer from general fund. $1,500 from account 163010005210110. Recreation heating to account 163010005993000. Recreation transfer to capital fund to further transfer $1,500 to Fund 35434999600. Nickerson Park upgrade transfer from general fund. $1,000 from 1630100 to 524011. Recreation building maintenance to account 163010005993000. Recreation transfer to capital and to further transfer $1,000 to Fund 35434999600. Nickerson Park upgrade transfer from general fund.
Second.
I'm not done.
Oh, I thought that was the last one, sorry. I'm off. I withdraw, sorry.
$1,000 from account 163010005460012 recreation supplies rec grounds to account 163010005993000 recreation transfer to capital fund and to further transfer $1,000 to Fund 35434999600 Nickerson Park upgrade transfer from the general fund. One more. $114,974 from account 1124100057883, 578-380. Citywide Reserve Fund for Capital to account 112410005993000. Citywide transfer to capital fund to further transfer $114,974 to Fund 35434999600. Nickerson Park upgrade transfer from the general fund.
Second.
Excellent. Okay, so as you can tell by all those transfers that they really want to repair these pickleball courts. So, as you can see, Chrissy took from every account she had available to help fund this. And also, if anybody looked in the backup documents, that they will be the Pickleball Advisory Group will be fundraising for 5% of the total, 10%, there's a 10% contingency in the overall budget, and 5% of the total projected cost will be $10,778. They'll be fundraised by the pickleball community. So, as you can see, they very much want these repaired, and as I'm sure you've all been aware that pickleball, I haven't played it yet, but everybody loves it, and it's great for the city. So, in the backup documents, it's more community-based programming, recreation opportunities for Attleboro residents, expanding access to health and wellness activities, strengthening Attleboro's active, enthusiastic pickleball community, and benefiting local youth and families, and investing in the improvement of these pickleball courts would provide all that. So that's the information I have on those. Does Council Angelo, do you have a question?
Yeah, well, not a question, more a comment. This is exploding. The YMCA has leagues, campgrounds have this wherever you go. This is nationwide. This is just expanding like crazy. So this is great that we're on top of this and getting this done, and I applaud them for doing this.
Great, thank you. Does anybody else have any questions or comments? With that, I'll call for a vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes. And that's all the business I have. I'd like to call for an adjournment at 8:44.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. We are adjourned. Thank you.
Public Safety and Emergency Management Committee to order at 8:44. Myself, Councilor Roy, and Councilor Angelo. I have two motions this evening. From the docket of June 3rd, 2025, I entertain a motion to approve the expenditure of funds anticipated to be received fiscal year 26 by the Attleboro Police Department from the Executive Office of Public Safety and Security State 911 Department in the amount of $165,733 and approve any future, I think it should say, grant amendments.
Second?
Thank you. It's a grant, and we don't have to match it as a city. So I think that that's encouraging. And there's a list of items that they have to focus on using the grant. So it can be computers, enhancing 911 communications. It could also be used for heating, ventilation, air conditioning. So it seems like a no-brainer. Any questions or comments? All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. On the docket of June 3rd, 2025, I entertain a motion to appropriate $130,000 from account undesignated fund balance free cash general government to fund fire alarm console upgrade.
132,000.
Oh, sorry, what did I
That's the
say?
only point I'll make, then I'll second that.
Okay, 132,000. Bless you, sir. Thank you. I think you seconded me, Counselor LaVoy. So our current fire alarm consoles are obsolete and no longer supported by the manufacturer. Replacement parts are no longer available. So this is one of those situations where we're getting backed in a corner here. Just really have to look at that capital improvement book and maybe try to get ahead of this instead of like always being in a position where it just kind of needs to happen. But those are my only comments on it. Any other?
Really quick, just for any councilors that were at the capital improvement tour, the chief mentioned it and pointed out, I believe this is the one at the Dodgeville station. But he had pointed out and made mention of many of these issues coming down the road. Parts are obsolete, they can't fix it anymore, so.
Yeah, this actually, it does include Briggs and South Attleboro. But yes, I think we were at the we were in Dodgeville when he was mentioning that. Yeah, so, all right. Any other comments or questions? All those in favor?
Aye.
We've been here for a while, but I do want to, I'll do the next motion and just discuss it, and then maybe pull back the second, just so we can get some clarity on it. From the docket of March 18th, 2025, new business requesting an internal enforcement of parking-related violations to be managed by the police department. Thank you. I sent out an email. This was, Mason and I were discussing it in the fall. I forwarded it to the full council, and I didn't know if this was a time to start having this discussion since we're doing the budget, where we could potentially do something. It was suggested to me, and I really like the idea of slowly, even over the years, kind of making it more of an internal process. This is a big complaint I get from residents is that the agency that we hire doesn't use discretion. They get paid based on tickets, so they're incentivized to ticket. So versus it being internal, we would have, the police department would have a discretion to potentially allow for certain things. So does anybody have any comments or questions or information you want before Council Gordon? I'll just go on.
Thank you, Chair Holmes. For a good portion of time, I've been in favor of this, having met with Deb a handful of times, the mayor a couple times. From the research I've done, it's an extensive ask, and there's a good handful of ordinances all tied into parking that kind of shift it here, there, everywhere. But based on if we're struggling to fund an assistant to the mayor, I guess I'm worried about the ability to fund this. Though I do believe that the police department should be the one handling it. And especially now, even over the last month, we've, our person we had before retired, and now we have new people who, from my perspective, have not done a good job, far worse than what we're seeing. I've made calls, Councilor Angelo can attest, a couple different issues with a couple different businesses, and, I called Mason, the mayor, Mike Tyler, so from my understanding now, we're working more to push for better training because of what we just saw with a shift in staffing there. Again, I support it, but I don't know that we can afford it. But I think working with the administration to find maybe some shifts we can make, or even just different people in charge of it, that might be the approach. That's my comments. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, I appreciate doing this, and it's funny because even today I got a call of that they weren't doing enough. There was some complaints that, why is this happening, why is that happening, and I'll get into details at a later time. But at the same time, as Councilor Voigt pointed out, we've had many phone calls, I think all of us had, about parking and stuff. And like right up, the apartments right over here too. That's been an issue and continues to be an issue. But I would need to, what's this going to cost the administration? What is going to be the full cost? What are we paying now, and what would be the cost of the administration? And would it tax? I know we're struggling to fill. Would we need more officers or not, or would it be a separate, a non-police officer or a parking enforcement hired by the chief of police or something or other? So I guess there's a lot of questions, but I do like where you're going with it.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I hear your thoughts about cost and things, but I do think it should be something internal, especially if we're thinking about the development that we were just talking about earlier, and having issues with parking, and then people having to park on the streets, and then it'd be more of an issue for people who are parking where they live. So that too is just something to think about in this, and having an internal person might again have the discretion to be able to say, oh, that person lives here, so give it a, instead of just giving them a ticket.
So I know you, Councilor Reynolds, Councilor LaVoie's done a lot of work on this. I personally appreciate your approach here. I think having a conversation now gives us the opportunity to plan. Maybe it's not this budget, maybe fiscal '27, who knows? But there's just so many moving parts to take it and move it from DPW back to the police. And I think it does make sense to be there, but there's just a lot of moving parts, a lot of coordination. But I think having the conversation now, and I would look to the finance chair to potentially put this into the budget message. And, I think just having a conversation as opposed to rushing into it. I know you've done your research. I know Councilor LaVoie's talked to Deb, as he said, the mayor, but he's also talked to the chief. So I've talked to the chief several times on this as well. It just makes sense. But having the conversation now and just kind of getting the conversation started as we move into future budgets, I think is responsible. So kudos.
Thank you. Thank you. Any other comments or questions or information that you'd want me to get about it? No? All right, so I'll ask you to remove a second. Thank you.
I'll rescind my second.
Thank you. So I will call for an adjournment.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. We are adjourned at 8:52. Thank you.
Zoning, Land Use, and Sustainability Committee is canceled for tonight.
Transportation and Traffic Committee has no business. We'll meet at the next appropriate time.
I call ordinances, elections, and legislative matters to order at 8:52. Members of this committee include myself, Councilor Holmes, and Councilor Kovas. From the docket of April 15, 2025, I entertain a motion to amend Chapter 12 of the revised ordinances as follows. Strike Section 12-3.3E in its entirety and replace with park or operate any motor vehicle from dusk to dawn on any road, drive, or parking area located in or designated for public parks, commons, playgrounds, athletic fields, and outdoor recreation facilities, except as provided in Section 12-3.3A, where otherwise allowed in Chapter 10 of the revised ordinances. This section does not apply to school department property. Strike Section 12-3.5 in its entirety and replace with A, any person who disrupts any activity being held in a park, common, playground, athletic field, or recreation center shall be removed from the facility. B, except as described in subsection C, any person who violates any provision of this ordinance shall be punished by a fine according to the following schedule unless a higher applicable penalty is provided in other sections of the ordinances of the city of Attleboro. 1, first offense, $150. 2, second offense, and each offense thereafter, $300. 3, such penalties shall be assessed in accordance with the provisions for the non-criminal disposition of violations in General Laws, Chapter 40, Section 21D as amended. 4, in addition, any persons responsible for damaging a park, common, playground, athletic field, recreation center, or equipment and facilities associated therein shall be liable to pay for the cost incurred to repair such damage, including the labor charges of staff workers or contractors who perform the repair work. C, any person who violates Section 12-3.3E shall be subject to a fine of $55 for each offense, It shall be the duty of all Attleboro law enforcement personnel to enforce the provisions of this section.
Second.
Thank you. Motion is in order. I'm going to suggest an amendment to this, and I will explain after I read this amendment here. So I move to amend the proposed section 3-3.3E to remove the following phrase: located in or designated for public parks, commons, playgrounds, athletic fields, and outdoor recreation facilities.
Second.
Motion is in order. Thank you. Okay, so I'll attempt to keep my comments brief on this since I don't want to make a mountain over a molehill, but the proposed section 12-3.3E lists all the facilities that I just called out here: public parks, commons, playgrounds, athletic fields, and outdoor recreation facilities in the outset of 12-3.3. And I'm realizing now I probably should have just passed out the section of the ordinance that applies. But essentially, it's a long section of, I think, 26 different items. And the beginning of the ordinance starts with, unless otherwise directed, organized, or permitted by the commissioners, it shall be unlawful in the parks, commons, playgrounds, athletic fields, and outdoor recreation facilities of the city of Attleboro to, and then all of the following activities that are listed thereafter. I feel it's redundant to list it again in subsection E. Perhaps one counter argument is that by repeating the list, it adds clarity to subsection E. But I'll say my position is that this is the only subsection in 12-3.3 that repeats verbatim each of these facilities, which is already contemplated in the introductory paragraph to 3.3. And I think adding it could actually cause some confusion since each subsection already applies to each of this list of facilities. So hopefully that makes sense. But in the spirit of consistency, clarity, and also brevity, I'd suggest just removing that in the list of subsection E. Are there any questions?
No, that's very clear.
I actually
Yes, Counselor, sorry.
have a question about not actually the amendment that you're making, and I can ask the question at a different point if that's later.
Sure, then maybe we should, yeah,
I'm sorry.
let's vote on this amendment first, and then we can contemplate that in the original motion. So any comments on the amendment? Okay. Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, the motion passes. Okay, so now we'll consider the motion as amended. Counselor Sawyer.
My question, I guess, was, it's striking this section out to add it in, are we now just adding park or operate any motor vehicle from dusk to dawn in the, in this, and that's why this whole thing is being amended?
Yeah, so I wanted to take it sort of in piecemeal. Yeah, you're a step ahead of me. That's correct. So right now, as it reads in the ordinance, the only thing that's prohibited is operating any motor vehicle. So this also adds into, let me just double check here. Yeah, to park. So that's literally the only addition. So park or operate. So as Derek mentioned here at the public hearing a few weeks back, they want to make sure that they're codifying, in the ordinances and creating a backbone for the ability to enforce this, so that people aren't parking overnight in city recreational facilities, essentially.
I have another comment on, I don't know exactly how to say it, but parking, you meaning like leaving your car there and leaving?
Yeah, overnight. Yeah, so.
Overnight?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so it prohibits parking there from dusk to dawn. So, I mean, you figured it's really overnight.
I was just thinking, even when Derek was here talking about it, that I am concerned for the people who don't have a place to live and they have a car. And so then they want to go to a park because that's a safe place for them. So I'm just thinking that that would be stopping people from being able to go to a place that they feel safe if they have a car. That's just my comment on that. And that I would consider allowing for that to happen, which I'm just concerned for that reason.
Any additional comments, concerns? Councilor Roy?
Thank you. I believe a good deal of this kind of became an issue with more so the Highlands, there was a truck with a 20-foot car trailer, like a commercial vehicle with a commercial trailer, parked there for weeks on end. We actually had someone approach that committee of the whole about it. I drove by there, took pictures. I mean, there was that vehicle, there was a couple other trucks through like city contractors, so it did look kind of like a storage yard. Didn't look like a park. To me, that feels less inviting to bring my wife and daughter to. Is there's a bunch of commercial vehicles kind of just lingering and like parked all every which way. So I think that's more the premise here. And I feel like if there was a concern for, as Councilor Sawyer brought up, that, you know, Derek would have made mention of it or something like that. But at least from what I gather, it's more of these like commercial vehicles or things like that.
Yeah, and just to follow up, I would imagine the police department would use discretion and how they're enforcing this to really understand if there are other issues surrounding this, right? Obviously, we don't want to create any unintended consequences, but at the same time, we do want to create the ability for law enforcement to be able to do their job and be able to enforce something that's on the books. So this does, in fact, put it on the books. Yeah, Councilor Cobus.
And I remember we had the tow truck parking on the park over on Holden Street for a while, overnight, and it was a pain in the neck. So I think this is great.
Councilor Fuller?
There seems to be no provision for towing. Is that intentional?
That's a good question. I don't know that was contemplated. Certainly didn't come up in the public hearing, in any of our interactions with the administration or even in my subsequent conversations.
Well, I'm not on your committee, but would you consider an amendment to add to the penalties towing improperly parked vehicles? That's the way to get rid of it. $100 fine is, doesn't do much.
Yeah, and to be clear, actually, the fine would probably only be $55 because that's what's actually in that subsection C. That's what would apply.
Okay.
So
Even less.
yeah. I suppose it's a possibility, but again, I think we want to be judicious and careful with this and not overly bind law enforcement as well. I would imagine that would be a last resort, right? I mean, you don't want to go around towing vehicles, but at the same time, we do want an ordinance that addresses the point and does create some backbone for law enforcement to be able to address those situations. So I'm not sure it's something that personally I think we should address this go around. Ordinances can always be amended, right? And so I think the way that's wordsmithed to again not create other issues is also important, but I think that's another element and dynamic to this that I'm not sure that we need to address at this point, but again, that's my personal opinion. So, any other questions, comments? Councilor Roy.
I think state law outlines like abandoned vehicle for X amount of days. I think it's 30 days, or they notify and give them a week time or something of that nature. I think this just adds the caliber to fine them in the meantime, as opposed to just giving them a free 30 days of parking. But I'm happy to support it if we want to put it in there.
Yeah, and part of my concern with adding that element now, and again, if this is something the council wants to explore, I think we can go back and have this discussion. But I think it's more than just adding a provision to tow. I mean, we've got to make it very clear, like what steps have to happen before we get there, right? And so there's a progression, and that's at the end of that progression, the way that I see it. So I think it's a little bit more nuanced, but it's definitely worth having the conversation. I'm glad you brought it up.
If I may.
Yes, absolutely.
I am not thinking about a car that's abandoned, but I am thinking about the situation by the old school parking lot, or the new school parking lot, where you took photographs, the president took photographs, I took photographs, the car would disappear for 2 days and reappear, and this happened repeatedly. So when this happens repeatedly, we want to see something other than fines. And since that does happen, I think it's worth serious consideration to add towing to the penalties, but as you say, not as a matter of first resort, but perhaps as a matter of second or third resort.
Any additional comments, questions, concerns? Councilor Copus?
Before making changes to add towing, I'd like to move, my suggestion would be to move forward with this, see that this does not work, and have sort of the police chief or somebody come forward and ask to make those further changes, would be my suggestion. I think it's a valid and good suggestion, but I'd like to sort of do this as an iterative process and sort of show that this doesn't work before sort of taking those next steps. That would be my suggestion.
And my thoughts would be along the same lines. I mean, at the end of the day, this isn't going to be written in stone, right? I mean, so to the extent that that there's some additional provisions that we need to take care of issues that we're seeing in enforcement, I think we address it at that point. I trust that, obviously Derek was here and Chief Hagney, and they were in support of this ordinance change, the way that it was proposed. So I feel if they had an issue with that at the outset, it would have come up. But again, you can never predict how enforcing these things will play out. So I think that is, I agree with that counsel, Councilor Cobus. Any other questions, comments, concerns? All right, hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes. From the docket of April 15, 2025, I entertain a motion to amend section 15-1.4 as follows due to changes in state law. Strike section 15-1.4 in its entirety and replace with the following: 15-1.4 constables. The mayor may appoint up to 4 constables for a term of 1 year, subject to confirmation by the municipal council. In the absence of certification as a law enforcement officer, as described in Chapter 6E of the Massachusetts General Laws and 555 CMR 9.00, said constables shall have the power to serve civil process only.
Second.
Thank you. Motion is in order. Okay, so as Chief Hagney explained at the public hearing a couple weeks ago, this ordinance really needs to be changed to comply with state law at the end of the day, which under Chapter 253 of the Acts of 2020, just in case anyone's interested, redefined who is authorized to exercise law enforcement powers in Massachusetts. So for context, here's a couple of important things to note that did change under the Acts of 2020. So number one, this reform created the Massachusetts Peace Officers Standards and Training Commission and required certification of law enforcement officers under MGL Chapter 6E. And this is in large part what the chief spent the beginning of his testimony describing at the public hearing. 2, only individuals certified by the Post Commission are legally permitted to exercise police powers. So think arrest authority, maintaining public order, enforcing criminal law, those things. And then 3, the regulations that implement this are in 555 CMR 9.00, and that governs the certification and decertification process of law enforcement officers in the state. So that brings us to the $1 million question, which is why do we need to amend this ordinance? And the reason is, as Chief Hagney alluded to, is to make sure that that ultimately our ordinance doesn't conflict with state law. So the ordinance currently says constables shall diligently attend to the preservation of the peace, to the prevention of thefts, and the loss of or injury of property, so on and so forth. This language implies that constables in Attleboro can engage in law enforcement activities, essentially acting like police officers. But as we just discussed, under the new post regulations, unless a constable is certified as a law enforcement officer, which is different than a constable, then they can't lawfully perform those duties anymore. So the issue is that the current ordinance implies that local constables have powers that they may not legally exercise under state law unless they're certified law enforcement officers. So again, Chief Hagney explained this. He gave us the short history lesson, but once upon a time, constables back in the colonial days in Massachusetts, they were the ones that were responsible for keeping the peace, for enforcing laws, etc. They performed traditionally law enforcement activities. But over time, with the establishment of police departments, I think this was I did a little history lesson on this, like the mid 1800s. I think that's when Boston it was the first official, I would say, officially recognized police department. But that's when some of the duties started to shift away from constables. So the duties now, as they lie in state law, are really just serving papers at the end of the day. So essentially, the proposed ordinance strikes all language referencing law enforcement powers and makes clear that only constables who are post-certified may have law enforcement powers. So if they're not certified, they're limited to serving civil process. So subpoenas, evictions, legal notices, which doesn't require certification. So that's that in a nutshell. So forgive me if I went overboard and over-explaining that, but wanted to make sure that everybody understood the context carrying over from the public hearing. So with that being said, any questions, comments, concerns?
I just want to say thank you for going over it again. That was very clear.
Yes.
Good. Okay, any additional questions, comments, concerns? Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes. Okay. From the docket of April 1st, 2025, I entertain a motion to hold a public hearing on July 15, 2025 regarding the attached home rule petition calling for the establishment of a board to oversee use and occupancy payments for manufactured housing community accommodations in the city of Attleboro.
Second. Oh, did you?
I will go ahead and read this in committee, if you don't mind. So I will read through this. So this is built into the record. Home rule petition of the city of Attleboro through its mayor and municipal council. We move to petition the general court to enact the following legislation providing for the establishment of a board to oversee use and occupancy payments for manufactured housing community accommodations in the city of Attleboro with the powers and duties set forth below, provided that the legislature may reasonably vary the form and substance of the requested legislation within the scope of the general public objectives of the petition. An act providing for the establishment of a board to oversee use and occupancy payments for manufactured housing community accommodations in the city of Attleboro, Massachusetts. Whereas older adults currently make up 15.4% of the Massachusetts population, and this age group is expected to increase to 21% by the year 2030. Whereas in Massachusetts and across the country, institutional investors are buying up manufactured housing parks and raising land rents, forcing many senior and low-income residents out of their homes. Whereas in an environment of continually increasing housing costs, manufactured housing offers sustainable and affordable housing options. Whereas the city of Attleboro is a vibrant and increasingly diverse city with a growing senior population. Whereas Attleboro has 7 manufactured housing parks with approximately 622 mobile or manufactured homes, most of which are occupied by seniors living on fixed incomes and low-income persons and families. Whereas it is in the best interest of the city of Attleboro to protect its manufactured housing park residents from aggressive rent increases and risk of eviction. Be it enacted by the Senate and House of Representatives in general court assembled, and by the authority of the same as follows. Section 1. The city of Attleboro may, by its ordinances, establish a board for the purpose of overseeing the use and occupancy payments of manufactured housing parks in the city, for regulating minimum standards for use or occupancy of manufactured housing park accommodations and eviction of tenants therefrom. The board shall have all powers necessary or convenient to perform its functions, including those established by ordinance, and may make rules and regulations and require the registration by owners of manufactured housing parks under penalty of perjury of information relating to the manufactured housing park accommodations. Violations of any ordinance adopted pursuant to this act or any order of the rent board shall be punishable by a fine of not more than $5,000. Section 2A, the board established pursuant to Section 1 may make individual or general adjustments either upward or downward as may be necessary to assure that use and occupancy payments of a manufactured housing community in the city are established at levels that accommodate the occupants of each manufactured home. B, the board shall have powers necessary or convenient to perform the following functions. 1, may make rules and regulations to effectuate the purposes of this section. 2, require the registration by owners and operators of manufactured housing communities under penalty of perjury of information relating to the manufactured housing community accommodations. 3, sue and be sued. 4, compel the attendance of persons in the production of papers and information. And 5, issue appropriate orders which shall be binding on both the owner and tenants of such manufactured housing community accommodations. Section 3, the following factors, among other relevant factors, which the board may define by regulation, shall be considered in determining whether manufactured housing community accommodations yield a fair net operating income. A, increases or decreases in property taxes. B, unavoidable increases or any decreases in operating and maintenance expenses. C, capital improvements of the manufactured housing community as distinguished from ordinary repair, replacement, and maintenance. D, increases or decreases in space, services, equipment, or other similar factors. E, substantial deterioration of the manufactured housing community other than as a result of ordinary wear and tear. And F, failure to perform ordinary repair, replacement, and maintenance. Section 4, Chapter 30A of the general laws shall apply to the board as if it were an agency of the Commonwealth, including provisions relating to judicial review of an agency order. Section 5A, the district court shall have original jurisdiction concurrently with the superior court of all petitions for review brought pursuant to Section 14 of said Chapter 30A. B, the superior court shall have original jurisdiction to enforce this act and any ordinances adopted thereunder and may restrain violations thereof. Section 6, the personnel, if any, of the board shall not be subject to Chapter 31 or Section 9A of Chapter 30 of the general laws. Section 7, this act shall take effect upon its passage.
Second.
Motion is in order. Okay, so after that big mouthful, this is essentially just a call for the public hearing. Any questions, comments, concerns? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes. That concludes the business of ordinances, elections, and legislative matters. I call for an adjournment at 9:17.
Second.
Thank you. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, we are adjourned. And the special committee on tax abatement review is canceled this evening.
Special Committee on Classification Compensation is canceled, and call for a meeting of the next appropriate time.
I call the special committee on rules and procedures to order at 9:17. From the docket of April 1st, 2025, I entertain a motion to approve a proposed amendment to council rules and procedures, section 3-1.2 as follows. Revise section 3-1.2, the first sentence to read, regular meetings shall be held at the Attleboro City Hall Municipal Council Chambers, 77 Park Street, Attleboro, commencing at 6:30 p.m. And the concomitant, and revise the first sentence of section 1-9.2 of the revised ordinances to read, regular meetings shall be held in the Attleboro City Hall Municipal Council Chambers, 77 Park Street, Attleboro, commencing at 6:30 p.m. unless the time and/or place is changed to any other public building suitable, including broadcasting by the media, for conducting city business by a vote of the municipal council or by the council president, and notice of such change is given as required by the open meeting law.
Second.
Thank you. This is a proposal, a motion that was suggested to us by the council president, and so I am bringing it forward. I do not endorse this motion, and I would just like to explain why. I think a 6:30 start time is just too early. I think it works against residents who work at offices, who are particularly those that are outside the city limits and people who have to commute in and out of the city. I think it discourages resident participation in video or in person in our meetings, since it's difficult to arrive at City Hall at 6:30, and it'll just exacerbate the end of rush hour. And I think it interferes with the reasonable efforts of residents to view meetings, since this is really dinner time, a time to cook dinner, a time to eat dinner, and to perhaps give people a chance to breathe before they then tune in to our meetings. I also think that it will discourage people to run for office if they have to be here at 6:30 in the evening. I just think it's too early. Because I know the president is always interested in what other places are doing. I made some calls around to see what other towns are doing. Excuse me. And while I found that Springfield begins its public meetings at 6:30, as does, I believe, they were not certain, Fall River, Plainville, North Attleboro, Mansfield, Seacon, Taunton, New Bedford, all start at 7. I think there is a reason behind that. It's an accommodation. It allows people to both get here on time if they want to speak or if they want to participate, whether as a member of council or otherwise, but also does not limits the amount of time that we go on. I mean, I see now that it's almost 9:30. None of us wants to go on forever. Nonetheless, I think 7 is pushing it, and it is going against the grain of encouraging us to be, I believe, a commuter city, one where people come in and out of the city to work, and I want those people particularly to feel that they have full access to our government. So I'm bringing it out because it was a request, but I'm not endorsing it. Yes?
I actually, I see, I'm in the public a lot. I speak to a lot of people. I work at the YMCA every day, except for probably Sundays. And I'm hearing exactly the opposite. And I've even heard from regular speakers that are like, hey, we want to get home to our families, so the earlier the better. And I've had people, most people they're gonna listen to it on YouTube or anything, and they're gonna listen to it on their radio with their earpieces in while they're driving home or whatever they're doing and stuff. So so I've heard quite the opposite of the 6:30 time. It was a lot better for a lot of people, and I have not heard from one person that has said to me, I'd rather see it at 7 o'clock, not even one. So that's my comments.
Yes.
Thank you. Personally, I don't like the 6:30 stars, but I don't think that's up to me. I simply just think that we should call for a public hearing on it, because at the end of the day, it's really the general public who's impacted by it. And hey, if nobody shows up, that's fine. If nobody emails in, that's fine. But that would really just be my only ask, is that we get the public's perspective on it. And I feel like that's the goal here. I don't know that it's a preference of the president putting this business in. I think it's just something to look into, which I think is a good point of a public hearing. Thank you.
Yes, Councilor Forbes, Councilor Sawyer, and Councilor Holmes.
As somebody that is often racing home on the train, I respect wanting to start earlier, and we're here late. Personally, I would prefer to keep it at 7. I would vote this out of committee, and then I would not support this on the full council, but would obviously respect the will of the full council. I would prefer, but personally, I would prefer to keep it at 7 for all the reasons that you mentioned before, Councilor Forward.
Councilor Sawyer.
I agree with having a set time. Instead of having 6:15, 6:30, 6:45. I agree with having a set time, for sure. I do agree also with keeping it at 7. I come from Providence every day, so having the time to get home, get all my stuff together, printing things if I need to, whatever, to get to council, I think a 7 o'clock would be the good set time for me. But anyway, as all has been said, it all kind of goes with all of council plus the people watching.
Counselor Holmes?
Thank you. Counselor Angelo, his committee has a lot of guests. And I think to his point, they want to get here early. They don't want to be sitting around and waiting and speaking at 9:30 at night. I mean, we've seen people try to wait for a vote and they're exhausted. I do feel like when there's guests, they want to come earlier. Even department heads. I mean, I think they have a long day. They're here at 8 in the morning. They don't want to be here at 9:30 at night coming to speak to us, which I know sometimes they have to for budget and certain things that do come up. But it just seems to me that I think that the public prefers earlier in general. I'm open to either way, though. And that concludes my comments. I have flexibility. Thank you.
Vice President Dillon.
Thank you. I would be in favor of keeping it at 7. I think when it comes to department heads or, anybody else that needs to speak, it's just part of the job. If you have to be here at a certain time. I think 6:30 is too hard for people to get here, and I come from Canton, so I think, driving 90 miles an hour down the highway can be difficult. So I would be against putting it to 6:30. I would prefer to keep it at 7. Thank you.
Oh, I'm sorry, Counselor Waterman.
Well, I think I agree with the 7, because Councilor Kobus and I shared that same life. I worked in Roxbury for 25 years. But it's not just that you can't try to get out of work in time to get here. Sometimes you can't get here because of the roads, cars, particularly in the winter. So, and we seem to have winter for 3 or 4 months a year, so I'll go for 7.
Yes.
Thank you.
President
So
Delicio.
our job is when we have pieces of business brought to us by residents, by some of our partners to introduce it. The fact that, you feel, I got the sense that you're just like, the president likes when we look at other cities or towns. This was raised to me by several residents. Some of the people on this board, as a matter of fact, who have since changed, which is fine. I'm indifferent. This isn't a passion project of mine. Our job is when someone brings something to us, we introduce it, you let it go through the process, and that's what we're doing. From the 6:15, 6:30, those are usually committee meetings. There have been times that we've had committee meetings before a regular meeting, and just for the efficiency and the time, we would roll right into it. There's been several reasons as to why that happens, which we won't get into on this floor tonight, but there's no skin off my nose either way. I've talked to some of the same people that Councilor Angelo has spoken to. I've talked to some of the department heads who said, it'd be a lot easier because we're here from 7 a.m. until 7 o'clock. And then when you look at a night like tonight, we had guests that we didn't hear from until 8 or 8:30. It's always been 7. It's fine with me, So this isn't anything that's passionate to me. This isn't something that I'm going to be like, oh man, I can't, you're talking 30 minutes. The other thing, keep in mind, is you looked at all the other communities, but you didn't look at Attleboro. Most of our boards and commissions, including the school committee, start at 6:30, which is another reason why it was brought there. So, we bring in pieces of business that we don't necessarily always support. 6 of one, half dozen of another to me. I mean, I'm here anyway, so.
Well, I appreciate your point, and I didn't mean to erroneously make a suggestion that is not in fact the case. I do know in other circumstances, and perhaps I just wanted people to know what other communities are doing for their public hearings, and they are overwhelmingly the ones.
But you called me out specifically on it.
I did.
Okay.
I did because you have asked me in the past about specific things about other communities. In any event, if I did that inappropriately, I certainly apologize. I did want the council to know other communities in the area. I did not call every community, I just did not quite random, but I called in the general area to see when their public hearings are. So, I would like to ask Counselor Holmes whether she is in favor of bringing this matter before the whole council, or whether, since there are at least two of us who are not in favor of this motion, we should, it should be defeated here and now. I know you said you would like to bring it out before the entire.
Correct.
council.
I don't like the idea of killing things like, especially things like this in committee.
Okay,
Agreed.
okay. Then, are there any other? Yes, Councilor Tavares.
I wonder whether it would be appropriate or advisable even to hold a public hearing on this matter and let the public come down and let us know their thoughts.
I can understand why you might suggest it. I think I am not in favor of holding a public hearing on this matter and on every modification to the ordinances of this nature that we make. And you made that suggestion earlier. I heard that. Yes, Counselor.
This is no disrespect to anybody, but I mean, the only answers we've had against it are, doesn't work for me. And I get that, because it really doesn't work for me either. I mean, there's days where I shower at 5:55 and I'm here for 6:30. I get it. But this isn't about 11 people. It's not about most people at City Hall. It's about what works for the citizens of Attleboro, which is why I mentioned the public hearing the first time. If people up here told me I had 35 emails and they said 7 p.m. works, perfect. But I mean, the arguments here today are, doesn't work for me. It's not about you. It really isn't about you. I understand it's about you getting here. If it changes to 6:30 and you can't get here, don't run again. But it's about the people of Attleboro, and I think a public hearing makes sense. This is probably the most public hearing oriented thing here, and we're not going to call for one because it doesn't work for you. I mean, to me, that's crazy. That is not how government works.
Well, I really don't think that's the only thing that we heard. Yes, Counselor.
It wasn't, I'd like to push back on that. We were using it as examples, right? So Todd, Council Cobus comes from Boston, I come from Canton, somebody comes from Providence, whatever the case is, we were just prime examples. And to say, don't run again if you can't make it, that's just insane. I don't care if we have a public hearing, whether or not we do or not, but there are good points on both sides. You know, sometimes I'm available at 3 p.m. on Tuesday. If you guys aren't, then don't run. Let's have them at 3. I can be here. If you can't, too bad. So we can have a public hearing. We can do whatever you see fit, but we were just examples and not because of us.
I will call for this motion to be voted on. All those who approve of the proposed amendment, please say aye.
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 I say no, but it passes. And that completes the business of the Special Committee on Rules and Procedures for this evening. I call for an adjournment at 9:33.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
We are adjourned.
Did you call the president? It's so nice to be talking. I'm sorry
No,
about that.
no, you didn't do anything wrong. No.
Waste of time.
I jumped on, he said.